I stood just inside the docking bay, watching the way the hangar lights glittered off the alien ships lining the port. The heavy metallic air bit at the back of my throat. That tang, mixed with a cold hum of energy in the walls, was my reminder of just how far I was from home. Even in this hangar, a sprawling bay in a Federation hub, it felt like the aliens around me could sense it too. Something that smelled foreign, maybe even primitive. But I'd been sent to represent humanity, and I wasn't about to let my instincts show. A low murmur caught my attention. Two crew members, a lanky, coral-skinned Keldron, and his stocky Irantok companion chuckled openly as they glanced in our direction. Voss, ever observant, leaned into me and muttered with a smirk, "Hear that, Cap? They think our hardware looks like kid toys." I didn't turn, but I felt the weight of that remark. It wasn't the first time I'd caught that mocking glint in an alien's eye, nor would it be the last. Apparently, high-tech mods and slim, energy-focused weapons had a kind of cultural value among these species, a way of flexing their prowess in intergalactic society. And here we were, practically dripping in ballistic and plasma-reinforced hardware, armor that weighed twice as much as theirs, and a full arsenal strapped across our backs like a team of glorified hunters. "Kid toys, huh?" I said, more to myself than anyone else. A part of me was itching to give them a demonstration, to show them what a real firearm could do without the safety protocols in place. But this was a diplomatic mission, and our first impression would be hard to take back. I focused on the mission and on keeping my instincts in check. "You sure about that restraint, Cap?" Voss whispered, eyeing the Keldron with a mischievous grin. "Not yet, Specialist. Just remember we're here to impress, not incite." But Voss's excitement was almost tangible. If anyone knew how to make a statement with our primitive weapons, it was Voss. A frontier colony engineer with a flair for turning human tech into lethal surprises, he'd perfected the art of setting safeties aside in favor of raw power. But even he knew there was a time and place. We moved forward, entering the main corridor where sleek panels and a series of hollow lights pulsed like a heartbeat. I noticed the way alien eyes followed us, their curiosity barely masked behind scornful glances. Corporal Ray Vera moved just ahead of us, scanning each exit and hallway with a calm, methodical eye. Where Voss practically radiated energy, Vera was my solid, steady ground, the one who always reminded me when my anger was about to cloud my judgment. She turned, catching my eye with a brief nod that said, "All clear." "Captain Marlowe," a mechanical voice interrupted, and I turned to see our diplomatic escort, a Federation official by the name of Zevtalok. Tall, with tendrils that flowed like living hair around its head, Zev was a Cylon and radiated an air of practiced detachment, his spindly form blending in with the cold ambience of the station. "Welcome to Federation Hub Alpha 3. I trust your journey was uneventful?" Zev's words had that smooth, placating quality I'd come to expect, as if we were already on the defensive and he were making allowances. "Pleasant enough," I replied, forcing a calm I didn't entirely feel. "We appreciate the invitation to discuss integration." Zev tilted his head slightly. "Yes, it's brave, perhaps, for humans to assume they're ready for Federation-level engagements. We're eager to observe how your technology fares in a wider arena. If you require assistance in acclimating, I am sure we could arrange." "Thank you," Vera interjected, her voice cool but polite. "We're well equipped for the task." Zev regarded her with a slight nod, almost as if he were amused at her assurance, and motioned for us to follow. We entered a grand chamber, circular and humming with energy. Representatives from nearly a dozen species sat around a tiered table, each station gleaming with bright metals and smooth curves. I noticed a few of them glancing at our gear, faces rippling with poorly hidden amusement. "Let us proceed with a demonstration," Zev announced to the gathered assembly, his voice carrying easily in the domed room. "A display of weaponry as a foundation of mutual respect." I tensed. This was more than just showing our equipment. It was a thinly veiled test. I could almost see Voss bouncing on his heels, his smirk barely held in check. "You brought your own armaments, I presume?" Zev inquired, his tendrils curling slightly. eyes alight with a predatory curiosity. Of course. I took a step forward, motioning to Voss and Vera. We'd be happy to give you a demonstration of our latest tech. A series of scoffs echoed around the room. One alien, a towering, muscular Agtos, murmured something to his neighbor that earned him a chuckle. I clenched my jaw, feeling that familiar burn in my chest. We might look primitive to them, but I knew the kind of power these relics packed. Voss carefully unfolded his compact plasma rifle, flipping a few switches with exaggerated care. We call it the Mark Roman IV Plasma Gauntlet, he explained, tone casual but eyes glittering. He aimed it at the far wall, where a reinforced target display had been set up. The Agtos snickered. A gauntlet? Primitive toys. I felt my patience snap a little, but I held steady. Specialist, whenever you're ready. He gave a casual nod and fired. A blinding, concentrated plasma burst hit the target, melting through the first layer of its armor. The display rippled with energy, and a small tremor passed through the room. Silence filled the chamber as everyone took in the smoking crater in the target. For a moment, I almost let myself enjoy their stunned faces. But it was short-lived. A Vhelen delegate, a spindly, insect-like species with multiple, faintly glowing eyes, stood, clapping its mandibles in what seemed like mock applause. Effective, in its way, but nothing remarkable by Federation standards. The others joined in with low murmurs of agreement. I wasn't surprised. Their pride wouldn't allow them to acknowledge the power, not directly. I shot Voss a warning glance as he looked ready to rip off the safety and really show them what it could do. I took a breath, calculating the best way to press the issue without outright challenging their egos. Perhaps you'd like to suggest an alternative test? I offered coolly, keeping my eyes on the Vhelen. Something more challenging. The Vhelen tilted its head, mandibles clacking in amusement. Very well. Perhaps a simulation of sorts, a battle scenario. Your team against a standard Federation drone force. I held my face impassive. They were clearly hoping to watch us struggle, and a part of me welcomed the chance to disappoint them. We're ready. The simulation area was more advanced than anything we had back home, but the drones were standard, a blend of automated turrets and nimble droids armed with plasma beams. The aliens watched from an elevated platform as we positioned ourselves within the field, weapons loaded. I turned to Voss. Feel like showing them what the Mark Roman IV can do without restraint? He grinned, flicking a couple of toggles on his rifle. Been waiting for this, Cap. Vera took her position, checking her gear, her gaze steely as ever. I moved to the center, adjusting my assault rifle's output. The mission was clear: show them just how brutal human primitives could get. The simulation launched, and a swarm of drones moved toward us with synchronized precision, beams of light scorching through the air. I fired a burst, my rounds finding their mark in the closest droid, the impact sending it spinning into its allies. Voss let loose with the Mark Roman IV, now fully uncapped. The plasma burst tore through the drones in a single, volatile shot, each strike leaving smoldering, sparking remains. I could feel the intensity of the alien stares from above as they watched our bullets and plasma rounds carve a destructive path. A barrage of plasma fire erupted from the turrets, forcing us to scatter. Vera ducked behind cover, firing calculated bursts at the droids, while Voss aimed and took down a turret with an overcharged plasma shot that lit up the room. I moved through the chaos, unloading round after round, keeping us from being flanked. The aliens were silent now, their smug amusement replaced by an unspoken respect. We cleared the last of the drones, standing amidst the debris. For a moment, all I heard was the hum of cooling weapons. Then, from above, I heard the low, almost grudging murmur of the Vhelen. It appears that we have underestimated human capabilities. Voss grinned, lowering his rifle. Guess our toys aren't so primitive after all. I nodded, feeling the tide shift. We'd shown them what our primitive weapons could do, and this was just the beginning. The buzz of the victory was still fresh in my mind when we returned to our quarters that night. Voss hadn't stopped grinning since the simulation, while Vera, ever steady, merely nodded when I mentioned the mission's success. She was always calculating, always a few steps ahead. If anyone understood that one win didn't mean the whole battle was ours, it was her. I felt the tension easing out of my shoulders, but it was only for a moment. We'd drawn blood today, even if only in a simulation, and our host didn't like that one bit. "Captain Marlowe," came Zev's smooth voice over the intercom, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at Voss, who raised an eyebrow, and Vera, who had already stiffened, eyes narrowing. "Yes, Zev," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I hope you're settling in comfortably." There was an edge to his tone that set my instincts on edge. "We've arranged a more interactive event tomorrow. For the sake of furthering mutual understanding, of course." I could tell this wasn't a friendly invitation. They'd thrown down the gauntlet, and they weren't about to let it lie on the ground without picking it back up. I shot Voss a wary glance. He responded with a smirk and a shrug, his own way of saying, "Let them come." "Thank you, Zev. We're ready to engage in any way that benefits our cause here." The line cut off with a low beep, leaving us in silence. Voss broke it first, leaning against the wall with a relaxed grin. "Something tells me they're not planning on another friendly demonstration." "They didn't like losing to us," Vera said. Her voice clipped. "They'll try something to put us back in our place." I nodded. "They're looking to test the edges of what we can do. Make us feel small again." I could feel my own instincts flaring, the part of me that didn't want to back down, that wanted to push them until they really understood what humanity could do. But Vera was right. This was about making sure we knew our place in their hierarchy. "Get some rest," I said to them. "We'll need every ounce of alertness tomorrow." The next morning, Zev greeted us at the entrance to the arena, his spindly frame wrapped in a ceremonial sash. The markings on it were strange, complex swirls of color and light that seemed to pulse with energy. His thin-lipped smile was unconvincing. "Captain Marlowe," he said, inclining his head just enough to maintain appearances. "Welcome to the second phase of our evaluations, a live engagement scenario, if you will." I couldn't help but notice the faint excitement in his eyes, a kind of malicious eagerness I hadn't seen before. I kept my expression neutral, glancing at Voss and Vera, who were each as ready as I was. "An opportunity to showcase our skills again," I said, careful to keep any trace of sarcasm out of my voice. "Indeed," Zev replied, eyeing us each in turn. "This time, however, you will be facing not only drones but also Federation soldiers. It is a test of both your endurance and tactical capabilities." A few soldiers shifted in the shadows beyond him, and I took them in quickly. Tall, with sleek armor, energy weapons fitted to their limbs, they were Federation-trained, disciplined, and confident in their superiority. There was no hint of a smile on any of their faces. "It's just a simulation, right?" Voss murmured, a playful edge in his voice. I ignored him, meeting Zev's eyes. "We're ready to engage." Zev gave a curt nod. "Then we will begin. Best of luck, Captain." His gaze lingered on me a moment longer, as if sizing me up. Then he gestured for us to follow. The arena was different this time. The terrain was more challenging, with rocky outcroppings and thick metal structures positioned around the field, providing cover and creating a more complex environment. The Federation soldiers took their positions at the far end, their stances relaxed but alert. They were treating this as a routine drill, not a challenge. But I could tell that this was meant to put us on display, like some kind of primitive animals forced to show off their crude weapons. My gut twisted, but I held my anger in check. There was a lot at stake here, more than pride or personal satisfaction. We were representing humanity. Voss sidled up beside me, checking his plasma rifle with a calm hand. "Guess they didn't learn their lesson yesterday." "They don't know what we're really capable of," Vera said quietly, her eyes scanning the field. "We'll give them a lesson they won't forget," I replied. "Stay sharp, and remember they'll try to pin us in, force us to react. Don't give them that satisfaction." A light flashed overhead, signaling the start of the exercise. I heard the faint whir of Federation weapons powering up, and I felt my instincts kick in. We moved, slipping into position as the first shots rang out, plasma bolts streaking across the field. I ducked behind cover, raising my rifle and firing off a few rounds. The Federation soldiers scattered, but they were well practiced, their movements calculated. They were trying to hurt us, drive us back, and cut off our escape routes. Voss dropped beside me, his eyes alight with energy. "You think they know what the Mark Roman 4 can really do?" "Not yet," I muttered. "But they will." I gave him a quick nod, and he swung out from behind cover, unleashing a burst of plasma fire that seared across the field. The soldiers fell back, startled, and I took the opportunity to push forward, closing the distance. Vera followed in step, her movements precise and controlled. She took aim and fired, her shots finding their mark and forcing the soldiers to scramble. The Federation soldiers regrouped, adjusting their tactics. They were quick, but there was a rigidity to their movements, a lack of improvisation that made them predictable. I signaled to Voss and Vera, and we split up, moving in a coordinated sweep that pushed the soldiers back. One soldier, bolder than the others, rushed forward, firing off a rapid burst. I ducked, returning fire, and watched as he crumpled to the ground, his energy shield sparking uselessly. "That's one down," Voss muttered, a note of satisfaction in his voice. We pressed forward, driving them back inch by inch. But just as we began to gain the upper hand, a low hum filled the air, and I saw a new group of Federation soldiers entering the arena. They were heavily armored, their weapons crackling with a kind of energy I hadn't seen before. "Reinforcements," Vera said, her voice tense. "Looks like they're not taking any chances." I gritted my teeth. They were stacking the odds against us, hoping to grind us down and prove their superiority. But I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. "Keep moving," I ordered. "We don't stop until this is over." The new soldiers moved in, their weapons blazing. Voss took cover, returning fire with a fierce intensity, while Vera and I flanked them, hitting their exposed sides. It was a brutal, grueling fight, every step a battle, every inch a victory hard won. But we kept pushing, refusing to back down. One of the new soldiers lunged at me, his weapon crackling with energy. I dodged, rolling to the side and firing a burst that hit him square in the chest. He staggered, his armor sparking, and fell to the ground with a heavy thud. The remaining soldiers faltered, their confidence shaken. They hadn't expected us to fight like this, to keep going despite the odds. They were used to opponents who gave up, who backed down when faced with Federation power. But we weren't like them. We didn't have their technology, their resources, their advantages. But we had something they didn't: grit, determination, and the will to fight until the end. In the end, the soldiers retreated, their ranks broken. The arena was silent, the only sound our heavy breathing and the faint hum of cooling weapons. I looked up, meeting Zev's gaze. His expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of something in his eyes: respect, maybe, or something close to it. "We underestimated you, Captain Marlowe," he said quietly. "Perhaps humanity has more to offer than we realized." I didn't respond, but I felt a surge of satisfaction. We'd proven ourselves, shown them that we weren't just primitive humans. We were fighters, survivors, and they wouldn't forget it anytime soon. The dim light of the docking bay cast an eerie glow over the assembled crowd of Federation elites and their soldiers. Their armor gleamed with polished arrogance, their weapons an intricate mesh of technology that made our own gear look like antiques. The whole atmosphere buzzed with the low hum of Federation energy fields and an undercurrent of mocking anticipation. They wanted to see what the primitives could do, and they weren't hiding it. Voss leaned over, unable to contain his grin. "Hey, Captain," he whispered to me, his voice tinged with excitement. "I think they're about to show off." I glanced at him, catching his eye. His excitement was contagious, but I wasn't sure I liked where this was headed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Voss," I murmured. "Remember to keep the safeties on. We're not here to start a war." "Yet," he muttered with a smirk, adjusting his rifle. I rolled my eyes, but inside, I understood his excitement. There was something deeply satisfying about watching these elite soldiers and their tech, knowing that we'd bested them once already. Today, however, the stakes felt higher. The Federation had rallied its top forces, the best and brightest, each armored like a fortress, weapons more advanced than anything we'd ever seen. They weren't going to take another loss lightly. The Federation officer, a tall, imposing figure with skin like polished obsidian and a pair of brilliant silver eyes, stepped forward. His name was Arak, and he held a kind of authority that made him seem more machine than being. He moved with a precision that reminded me of the last mission's drones, except Arak's presence exuded a cold intelligence that no drone could match. Captain Marlowe. His voice reverberated through the air, every syllable dripping with an implied condescension. Welcome to today's demonstration. We thought it might be enlightening for your team to see the full potential of Federation weaponry. We'll be conducting a series of challenges today to help clarify your position among us. The last words held a thinly veiled insult. Voss rolled his eyes, muttering, "Oh, this'll be rich." I gave him a quick nudge, signaling him to keep quiet. We were here to observe, not to escalate, though I knew Voss would never let an opportunity to prove himself slip by if he could help it. Arak gestured to his left, where a group of Federation soldiers stood in a line. Each one held a weapon designed to impress. Energy cannons, plasma rifles, gravity grenades, the list went on. Their demeanor was smug, almost amused, as if they were certain the humans in front of them couldn't possibly compete. The first stage, Arak announced, is a simple accuracy challenge. He smiled thinly, a practiced expression of barely concealed contempt. We'll see if your projectile weapons can hold up against our plasma technology. Voss leaned over to me, his tone low but amused. Primitive projectile weapons, huh? Think they've ever met a Mark Roman 4 under pressure? I couldn't help but chuckle, despite the tension building around us. I think they're about to. The demonstration began with one of their own, a Federation sharpshooter who stepped forward confidently, raising a sleek, streamlined weapon toward the target board about 100 meters away. With an effortless squeeze of the trigger, the weapon hummed to life, releasing a single beam of crackling blue plasma that struck the center of the target dead on. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Voss scoffed, unimpressed. Nice light show. Let's see how they handle some real kinetics. I caught Arak's eye as I signaled Voss to step forward, my gaze saying all the things I wouldn't dare voice. He might think we were outmatched, but he was about to get a real lesson in what primitive human weapons could do. Voss took his position, rolling his shoulders as he raised his rifle, aiming with a steady precision that came only from years of combat and fieldwork. He exhaled slowly, then squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, a loud crack that reverberated through the bay, and the bullet struck dead center of the target with a force that made the metal shudder and buckle slightly. The Federation soldiers exchanged glances, and a few muttered to each other, their expressions unreadable. For them, precision was calculated, engineered. For us, it was instinctual, a product of years spent honing our aim with weapons that didn't correct for wind, gravity, or human error. Primitive, huh? Voss muttered under his breath, stepping back with a smirk. Arak's expression remained impassive, but I saw the faintest twitch of annoyance in his eyes. Interesting, he said coolly. A respectable shot. But the accuracy challenge is only the beginning. He raised his voice to address the crowd. Now, we move on to resilience. His tone made it clear he didn't expect us to keep up. One of his soldiers brought out what looked like a Federation-grade plasma launcher, a weapon more suited to breaching fortified walls than engaging infantry. I felt a twinge of anger flare up. They wanted to show us our limits, to make us feel like insects under a magnifying glass. The soldier fired at a reinforced panel set up for the demonstration, the shot sizzling through the air and smashing into the metal surface. The panel glowed red-hot, warping under the heat, but managing to stay intact. Barely. Arak turned back to us, his eyes settling on Voss. Care to try? Voss's eyes gleamed with a dangerous spark, The kind that told me he was more than ready to give it a shot. But I could see the wheels turning in his mind. He knew he wasn't going to win a brute force contest, not against Federation plasma tech. He needed to think outside the box. He shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Why not? He signaled to one of the human crew members who brought forward a Mark Roman III grenade launcher. The Federation soldiers sneered, clearly unimpressed with the primitive projectile-based weapon. But Voss had something else in mind. He aimed carefully, letting the launcher wind to full charge. Then, with a grin, he fired not directly at the panel, but just below it. The grenade exploded, sending a concussive blast that tore into the ground, shaking the reinforced metal panel and forcing it to buckle under the pressure. The effect was subtle but unmistakable. A spiderweb of cracks appeared across the panel, fracturing it in a way that the plasma shot hadn't. Voss shrugged, stepping back with a satisfied look. Guess a little good old-fashioned force does the trick, he said, unable to hide his grin. There was a murmur of shock from the crowd, a few Federation soldiers glancing at each other in surprise. They hadn't expected that. Federation tech was all about precision, about reducing waste and maximizing efficiency. But sometimes, brute force applied in just the right way could accomplish things their tech couldn't. Arak's mouth tightened into a thin line. Impressive, he admitted grudgingly, but we have one last test. Let's see how your soldiers hold up in real combat. I stiffened. This wasn't just a demonstration anymore. It was turning into a full-blown challenge, a test of our ability to fight on their terms, and they weren't going to make it easy. Captain Marlowe, Arak said, his voice laced with thinly veiled contempt, we invite you and your team to a friendly engagement. Our soldiers against yours. Non-lethal, of course. I glanced at Vera, whose expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the steely resolve in her eyes. Voss cracked his knuckles, clearly itching for a fight. All right, I replied, keeping my tone calm and steady. We accept. Arak's smirk returned, and he gestured to a set of Federation soldiers, each one armored and equipped with sleek, high-tech weapons. They took their positions at the far end of the field, settling into defensive stances. They were the best of the best, elites trained to perfection and outfitted with tech that made them walking fortresses. As we took our positions, Voss shot me a sideways glance. Think they'll mind if we take the safeties off? Keep them on, I replied, not entirely joking. We don't want this turning into an intergalactic incident. The field was vast, with scattered cover points and obstacles that made it perfect for testing tactics and reflexes. A light flashed overhead, signaling the start of the engagement. The Federation soldiers moved first, advancing in a coordinated sweep, their movements practiced and almost mechanical in their precision. I fired off a few rounds, aiming to keep them pinned while Voss and Vera took up positions on the flanks. Voss, true to form, didn't hold back. He ducked behind a metal barrier, popping up to fire off a burst of rounds that forced the Federation soldiers to pull back slightly. They weren't used to this kind of aggressive engagement. Most of their tactics were focused on precision, not raw firepower. The dull thrum of the Federation starbase echoed through the steel corridors, vibrating against the metal walls like a constant reminder of our place here. It was never quiet. The whispers of activity, the machinery, the movements of species from a dozen different planets, all melded into a singular background hum that made my skin itch with tension. But today, my tension had less to do with the unfamiliar setting and more with the fact that we were being set up. Voss glanced at me from his position against the wall, his usually easygoing face a mask of restraint. His posture was a coiled spring, his foot tapping against the floor as he waited, arms crossed, not for the first time in the past hour. We were supposed to be reviewing Federation tactics, training simulations, building up to what they kept calling a cultural integration exercise. But after the events of the last arena fight, I could sense the shift in the way they looked at us. The more victories we won, the more they disliked what we represented a challenge to their order. Captain, Voss muttered, his voice low, they're not going to let us just keep winning, are they? No, I said, folding my arms across my chest. They're not. The doors hissed open, and Vera walked in, her face a mask of cool calm, though her eyes were narrowed in a way I'd come to recognize as her version of a warning. She came to a stop next to us, glancing between Voss and me, her brow furrowed. "You heard?" she asked, voice even but laced with tension. "What did they say?" I asked, steeling myself. She took a steadying breath. "The Federation representatives aren't pleased with how we've been conducting ourselves in these demonstrations. They see us as undermining their authority." Voss scoffed. "They're just mad we keep winning." "More than that," Vera continued, glancing around the corridor to ensure we weren't being overheard. "The victories have been taken as an insult, especially by one particular high-ranking member, Councillor Raz. He's a major figure in their hierarchy, and he's demanded an honor duel to defend the Federation's standing." "A duel?" Voss repeated, his expression twisting with both confusion and frustration. "We're just supposed to accept that." I felt my jaw tighten. A duel wasn't just a fight. An honor duel was a test of strength and skill that had the potential to end poorly for the one deemed dishonorable, and by Raz's account, we were the offenders. Losing wouldn't mean just losing a fight. It would mean giving up our claim to even be respected here. "Looks like we don't have a choice," I said, glancing at Voss. "Which means we need to prepare." Voss smirked, the fire in his eyes unmistakable. "So we're going all in?" I nodded, letting a small grin break through. "Yeah, remove the safety." He chuckled, nodding back at me. It was time to push our technology and training as far as it would go, to show the Federation what humanity was capable of when it wasn't holding back. We spent the next several hours locked away in our quarters, the faint hum of alien tech in the walls doing nothing to quiet the intensity building inside the room. Our preparation wasn't just physical, it was mental. And after each small test of our tech and modifications, I could feel the air in the room thickening with anticipation. Voss had stripped down his plasma rifle, a weapon he'd already heavily customized, and was tinkering with an additional power cell, boosting its charge capacity far beyond the usual safety limits. I watched as he reassembled it with steady hands, each movement methodical. "Remember, Voss," I said as he worked, "this isn't just about power. We have to last, and we can't afford any mistakes." He glanced up at me, eyes glinting with a fierce determination. "Trust me, Eli. I'm making this as stable as it can be. I won't let it overload." I nodded, turning my attention to Vera. She was modifying her energy shield, tweaking the field's frequency to resist the alien plasma weapons more effectively. Vera had always been meticulous, constantly pushing her limits without letting her mind slip into distraction. She didn't look up as I approached, her focus completely on her work. "They'll be using tech we're not fully familiar with," she said softly, more to herself than to me. "Their weapons rely on concentrated plasma bursts. If I can stabilize the shield frequencies at a higher output, it should hold." "Will it last?" I asked. She nodded, though her lips tightened. "Long enough." Once Voss had finished with his rifle, he straightened up and looked at me, a grin spreading across his face. "You're bringing the Mark Roman IV suit, right?" I let the smile creep up my face. The Mark Roman IV was the Federation's way of humoring humanity, a suit of armor they deemed suitable for our inferior technology. But we'd modified it, enhanced it with advanced shielding tech we'd developed on our own, adjustments that didn't follow the Federation's strict specs. The suit was heavy, but it was also nearly indestructible. "Yeah," I replied. "They wanted to see what we're capable of. We'll show them." The arena was a colossal expanse of metal and stone, ringed with stands where dozens of alien figures loomed, watching. Their eyes, some glowing, some piercing and cold, were trained on the center of the battlefield, where we were lined up, facing Councillor Raz and his entourage. His soldiers were dressed in dark, seamless armor that glinted with a dull sheen. I could feel their sneers, the quiet mockery in the way they held themselves. Raz himself stepped forward, his thin lips twisted into an unkind smile. He was tall, with dark, grayish skin and narrow, slanted eyes that watched us with a detached, almost bored expression. His voice, smooth and clipped, echoed across the arena. "Captain Marlowe," he began, gesturing to the audience gathered around. "You have made quite the impression on our people. However, it is time to see if that impression holds in the face of true challenge." I inclined my head, letting no hint of fear show in my expression. "We're ready, Counselor." He smirked, as though amused by the formality. "Then let the duel begin." A loud gong reverberated across the arena, signaling the start of the match. Raz's soldiers took their stances, each of them primed and ready. There was no mistaking it. They had no intention of holding back. Voss shifted next to me, his rifle humming with energy, his eyes locked on our opponents. "Let's make this count," he muttered. "Stay tight," I ordered, keeping my voice calm. "They'll try to split us up. We hold the line." The soldiers advanced, their movements fluid and coordinated. They were highly trained, working as a single unit, their rifles raised in perfect synchronization. Voss and I fired back, our plasma bolts cutting through the air, but the Federation soldiers' shields absorbed the blasts, dissipating the energy with ease. "Vera," I called out, ducking behind a column as plasma bolts streaked past me. "Shields holding?" "Barely," she replied, her voice strained as she adjusted her own shield generator. "Their output is higher than I calculated. We can't take too many direct hits." "Then we don't give them any," I muttered. The battle turned into a blur of movement. Voss ducked and rolled, his rifle firing in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark. His modifications were working, the extra power tearing through the Federation shields, forcing the soldiers back. One of them closed in on me, his weapon raised. I brought up my arm, activating the Mark IV shielding, and braced myself as his plasma burst struck the barrier. The shield flared, absorbing the impact, and I took the opening to drive my elbow into his chest, sending him stumbling back. Vera was holding her own, her movements precise and calculated. She was outnumbered, but she fought with a calm intensity that cut through the chaos. Her modified shield flickered as she took another hit, but she adjusted, recalibrating it on the fly. "Eli," Voss called, his voice taut with urgency. "They're regrouping. I think they're going for a coordinated strike." "Hold your ground," I replied. "We're not backing down." The soldiers moved in again, their formations tight. They were trying to box us in, to pin us down and overwhelm us with sheer numbers. But they hadn't counted on the resilience of human tenacity. "Vera, can you recalibrate the shield frequency again?" I asked, my mind racing. She nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Give me a few seconds." Voss and I held the line, keeping the soldiers at bay as she worked. I could feel the heat of the Mark IV's shielding pressing against my skin, the faint hum of the energy field pulsing with each shot it absorbed. My muscles ached, every movement a strain as we pushed ourselves to the limit. Finally, Vera looked up, a fierce gleam in her eyes. "Shield recalibrated. Let's see how they like it." We pressed forward, our combined firepower ripping through their lines. Voss's rifle discharged in a blinding flash, his shots tearing through their shields, forcing the soldiers back. Vera's shield held, absorbing their attacks with a newfound resilience, giving her the edge she needed to close the distance. I moved in, my fist finding their mark as I took down soldier after soldier. The Mark IV's enhancements were working, amplifying my strength and speed, giving me the upper hand in close combat. Each strike reverberated through the arena, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and grit. The audience watched in stunned silence as we tore through the Federation soldiers, their confidence shattered, their formations broken. Raz's smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of cold fury as he realized the extent of our capabilities. When the last soldier fell, the arena was silent, save for the heavy breaths of my team. We stood there, battered but unbroken, our defiance etched into every line of our faces. Raz stepped forward, his expression tight with barely contained anger. "You have proven your point, Captain Marlowe, but remember this victory does not mean you belong here." I met his gaze, unflinching. We don't need your approval, counselor. We're here because we belong, and we won't be pushed aside. Raz's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, turning and leaving the arena with his soldiers trailing behind him. As the audience dispersed, I looked at my team, feeling a surge of pride. We had shown them the strength of humanity, and though they might not admit it, they would remember this day. We had earned their respect the only way we knew how, by refusing to back down. And as we walked out of the arena, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. I knew something was wrong the moment I checked my weapon that morning. I stood in the dim light of our quarters, turning the rifle over in my hands. The usually steady blue hum of the capacitor was flickering, erratic. Beside me, Voss was muttering to himself, inspecting his own gear with that same alert look in his eye. "Voss," I said, keeping my voice low, "you getting this too?" "Thought I was losing it," he muttered, narrowing his eyes at his rifle. "But yeah, this thing's off. Feels like it's half dead already." Across the room, Vera was checking over her gear with her usual precision. But even she looked uneasy, her fingers tapping a quiet rhythm on the casing of her gun. She glanced up, meeting my eyes. "Sabotage," she said flatly, the single word carrying a weight that sank into the pit of my stomach. It made sense. After the wins we'd pulled off in the Federation training sessions, there had been a shift, a palpable tension in the air. Whispers in the corridors, lingering stares in the briefing rooms. Not everyone was thrilled about what humanity had shown so far. Just yesterday, I'd overheard two high-ranking officers arguing in the mess hall, their voices low but heated. "They're a liability," one of them had hissed. "Dangerous and unrefined. If they can't be controlled, they need to be eliminated." The other had tried to calm him, speaking in clipped tones about potential and unexplored opportunities. Now, staring down at my compromised weapon, I knew exactly how high the stakes were. We'd challenged the Federation's pride, and some of them weren't going to let that slide. "Captain," Vera said, pulling me back to the present. "They're expecting us for today's session. They'll be waiting." Her tone was cold, calculated, but I saw the fire in her eyes. She was ready to make whoever did this regret it. I nodded. "Let's move. We're not letting them see us falter." The arena was unusually crowded. Officers lined the upper levels, their eyes trained on us with a mix of curiosity and, in some cases, contempt. Zev was there too, standing off to the side with his usual inscrutable expression. But today, even he seemed tenser, as though he knew that something was about to boil over. We took our positions, but the moment I aimed, I felt the weight of the sabotage. My rifle was sluggish, the trigger response delayed, the power output barely a fraction of what it should have been. This was no small tampering. Whoever did this wanted us hobbled, helpless. Voss, beside me, clenched his jaw, looking like he was about ready to throw his rifle to the ground. I reached over, touching his shoulder, a silent reminder to keep his head. We weren't about to give these Federation elite the satisfaction of seeing us lose our composure. A low tone echoed through the arena, marking the start of the session. The holographic enemies flickered to life across the field, tall and menacing, each of them modeled after the Federation's worst enemies. Usually, these simulations were designed to push us to our limits, but with compromised weapons, it felt more like they were setting us up for failure. I gritted my teeth and signaled Voss and Vera. "We'll have to rely on precision. Every shot counts." They nodded, expressions hard. I took aim and fired, my pulse pounding in my ears, as the first shot barely made it halfway to its target before sputtering out, leaving nothing but a faint blue mist in the air. My gut twisted, but I kept my stance steady, taking in the field, recalculating. The holographic enemies advanced, and I could feel the Federation officers' eyes on us, waiting to see us falter, maybe even hoping for it. But we weren't about to give them that satisfaction. "Switch to kinetic," I called out, pulling a secondary weapon from my belt. It was old-fashioned by Federation standards, nothing more than a pistol with standard metal rounds, but it was reliable. Voss and Vera did the same, each of us adjusting to the familiar weight. The Federation officers around the arena looked on with a mix of confusion and scorn. To them, these weapons were relics, primitive. But to us, they were tools we knew, tools we could trust. The first wave of enemies came at us, fast and relentless, and we met them with grit and precision, our shots clean, our movements swift. Each bullet that landed was a small victory, a defiance against whoever had tried to bring us down. Voss took out 2 of the holographic soldiers with calculated shots to their heads, a smirk pulling at his mouth as he watched them flicker out of existence. Vera was precise as ever, each shot landing exactly where it needed to, efficient and unerring. But the sabotage went deeper than just our weapons. I noticed my HUD glitching, flickering between showing our position and blank static. They'd gone for the whole setup, making sure we were as vulnerable as possible. I pressed on, ignoring the glitches, focusing on what I could see and hear. The holograms weren't enough to throw us off. We'd fought worse, and we'd done it with fewer resources. Then, through the haze of gunfire and tension, I noticed something off in the far corner of the arena. A figure, real and solid, not a hologram, slipped out of the shadows, adjusting something on his wrist, a jammer, maybe, or another tool of sabotage. My stomach dropped. "Voss, cover me," I said, pointing toward the figure. "Vera, stay sharp." I moved quickly, keeping low as I crossed the field, dodging holographic blasts and weaving through the simulated chaos. The figure saw me coming, his eyes widening just a fraction before he tried to slip back into the shadows. But I was faster. I tackled him to the ground, my arm locking around his throat. He struggled, but I tightened my grip, pressing down until he stilled. "Who sent you?" I demanded, keeping my voice low. He remained silent, his face blank, trained into that cold, unfeeling Federation stare. I reached for the device on his wrist, yanking it off and examining it. It was a signal disruptor, designed to interfere with HUD displays and weapon calibrations. I felt a surge of anger at the thought of how far some of them were willing to go to see us fail. I stood, tossing the disruptor aside, and turned back to the field. The arena had gone eerily silent, the simulated enemies vanishing one by one as the sabotage was lifted. I looked up, meeting the eyes of the officers watching from above. Zev was there, his expression as unreadable as ever, but I saw the slight tension in his posture, the tightening of his jaw. He hadn't known about this, I realized. This went deeper than him, a faction within the Federation that saw us as a threat, enough of one to take us down by any means necessary. Voss and Vera joined me, their weapons at the ready, their eyes hard. We stood together in the middle of the arena, the tension thick in the air. Zev stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over us. "Captain Marlowe, care to explain this disruption?" His tone was smooth, but there was a steel edge to it, a reminder of the power he held. "I think you're asking the wrong person, Zev," I replied, letting my own anger slip into my voice. "Maybe you should be asking the ones who sent someone to sabotage our equipment." Murmurs rippled through the officers, some of them looking uneasy, others openly hostile. Zev's gaze flickered, but he kept his composure. "This is a serious accusation, Captain," he said, his voice measured. "Do you have evidence?" I held up the disruptor, letting the gathered officers see it. "Found this on one of your own men, hiding in the arena during the exercise. He wasn't here for moral support." A few officers shifted, their faces darkening as they realized the weight of what I was saying. This wasn't just about a rivalry or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated attempt to undermine us, to show us as weak, unworthy. Zev held my gaze, a flicker of something almost like respect crossing his face. "We will investigate this matter thoroughly," he said, his voice steady, "and those responsible will be held accountable." I didn't let my guard down, not even for a second. Words were easy, promises even easier, but I knew there were those within the Federation who would stop at nothing to see us fail. As we turned to leave the arena, I heard one of the officers muttering to another, his voice low but sharp. "They're too dangerous. This is why we can't trust them." But another voice, a different officer, replied, "They've proven themselves more than capable. Maybe it's us who need to adjust our view. I glanced over my shoulder, catching sight of the officer who'd spoken. He was watching us, a look of open curiosity in his eyes, as though he was seeing us for the first time. As we exited the arena, I felt a surge of defiance, a fierce pride in my team and in humanity. We'd faced down their sabotage, their attempts to break us, and we'd come out stronger for it. But I knew this was only the beginning. The Federation was divided, caught between fear and admiration, and we were standing at the center of the storm. Some of them would see us as allies, as valuable assets to their cause. But others would see us as a threat, a challenge to their authority and control. And we would have to be ready, because the next time they came for us, they wouldn't just be tampering with our weapons, they'd come at us with everything they had. As we walked back to our quarters, Voss let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Guess we made an impression." "Good," Vera said, her voice steely. "Let them be afraid. They should be." I nodded, my mind already racing with the possibilities, the next steps. We'd proven ourselves, earned their respect and their fear. And if they thought they could intimidate us, they were in for a rude awakening. We were here to stay, and no amount of sabotage or scheming was going to change that. The Federation could accept us, or they could fear us, but they would never break us. And in the end, when the reckoning came, they would see just what humanity was truly capable of. I walked into the negotiation chamber with a smirk plastered on my face, a feeling of triumph bubbling within me. The atmosphere felt charged, electric with anticipation, and I could almost hear the echoes of our earlier victories resonating in the air. The sleek, metallic walls shimmered with a glow that lit the faces of those seated at the long, oval table. Each one of them was a representative of the Federation elite, their expressions ranging from skeptical to begrudgingly respectful. I was finally here, and it felt surreal. Humanity had clawed its way up from being mocked as primitive to earning a place among the stars. I straightened my posture, letting my confidence flow freely. Today was the day we solidified our place in the galaxy. As I approached the table, I could see the Federation leaders exchanging glances, assessing me. I noted their elaborate attire, the intricate designs and alien textiles woven seamlessly, reflecting their status and power. Each of them was a piece of the intricate puzzle that was the Federation, and I was ready to show them how humanity fit into the picture. Captain Marlowe, a tall, blue-skinned alien with elegant features, said, leaning slightly forward, his golden eyes narrowing in interest. "We're glad you could join us." "Glad to be here, Ambassador Reith," I replied, allowing the corner of my mouth to twitch upward. "I've been looking forward to this." The tension in the room was palpable. I could sense the mix of curiosity and skepticism radiating from them. We were the underdogs, and they were still coming to terms with the fact that humanity had surprised them in ways they never anticipated. "Let's not waste any time," Reith continued, gesturing for me to take a seat. "We are here to discuss the terms of a potential alliance. The Council believes it could be mutually beneficial." I settled into my chair, my heart racing slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. Mutually beneficial? That's a strong statement coming from the Federation. I glanced around the table, noting the reactions of the others. Some were intrigued, while others wore looks of disbelief. "The recent displays of human ingenuity and resilience have impressed many of us," Reith continued, his voice smooth yet commanding. "However, there are still factions within the Federation who question your place here." "Ah, the naysayers," I said with a chuckle, leaning back in my chair. "You'd think they'd have learned their lesson by now. We've proven ourselves more than capable." "Proving capability is only part of the equation," a sharply dressed female alien interjected, her voice laced with skepticism. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will uphold its end of an alliance?" "Trust," I replied, my voice steady. "We've fought side by side against threats that even the Federation struggled with. We've earned trust in combat, and we will earn it in peace." Reith nodded, seemingly pleased with my response, but I could see the wheels turning in the minds of the others. They were weighing the risks, assessing whether humanity was a worthy addition or a potential liability. I propose a demonstration of our technological capabilities, I said, choosing my words carefully. Show the Council that we can hold our own not just in combat, but in innovation. Our weapons may be simple compared to your advanced technology, but they're effective, and we've got more up our sleeves. Are you suggesting a show of force? One of the other leaders, a stocky creature with a rough exterior, challenged. That could backfire. Not force, I clarified, my tone earnest. A demonstration. We could simulate a joint operation, showcasing our abilities and teamwork. I assure you, it will be enlightening. The room fell into silence as they considered my proposal. I could feel the tension ebb and flow like a tide, uncertainty wrestling with curiosity. Finally, Reith spoke again. A demonstration could provide valuable insights, he said slowly, eyeing his peers. However, we must discuss the parameters. There are factions that will be opposed to humanity's integration, and they will use any failure against us. I understand that, I replied, leaning forward slightly. But a failure on our part will also be a failure on yours. Humanity is not here to be a pawn. We want to stand alongside the Federation as equals. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps I was making headway, convincing them that we weren't just the reckless newcomers in a galaxy full of seasoned players. Then let us consider this demonstration, Reith said, nodding to the others. We'll need to establish clear terms to ensure everyone's interests are safeguarded. Captain Marlowe, what do you propose? I paused, gathering my thoughts. We can create a joint operation scenario, utilizing a simulated enemy. This will showcase our strategic prowess and adaptability. If we succeed, it solidifies our position as worthy allies. If we fail, we will accept the consequences without question. The tension in the room shifted. I could sense the Federation leaders reassessing their opinions, realizing that I was not merely asking for acceptance, I was demanding respect. The stakes were high, but I was willing to risk it all for humanity's future. Very well, Reith finally said, his expression thoughtful. Let us deliberate on the specifics and prepare for this demonstration. It will take place in 3 standard cycles. You'll have time to prepare your team. 3 cycles? I raised an eyebrow. That's plenty of time for us to gear up. Indeed, he replied, a slight smile gracing his lips. You'll need it. This will be a pivotal moment for both your people and ours. The following weeks flew by in a blur of training and strategy sessions. I gathered my team, Voss and Vera, and we worked tirelessly to create a plan that would showcase our strengths while addressing the Federation's concerns. I could feel the pressure building, but with it came a fierce determination. We weren't just fighting for ourselves anymore. We were fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy. As we prepared for the demonstration, I sensed the reluctance of some Federation leaders, particularly those who had resisted humanity's integration from the beginning. They were still wary, whispering among themselves, and I could almost hear their doubts echoing in my mind. Yet, I pushed through the uncertainty, focusing on the task ahead. The day of the demonstration arrived, and I stood at the edge of the arena, my heart pounding with adrenaline. The environment had been modified to resemble a chaotic battleground, smoke and debris scattered across the landscape, obstacles for both sides to navigate. The stakes were high, and I could feel the eyes of the Federation leaders upon us, scrutinizing every move we made. Ready? Voss asked, his voice steady despite the tension surrounding us. Ready, I confirmed, meeting his gaze. Vera stood nearby, her face a mask of concentration. We took our positions as the simulation began, and I could hear the distant thrum of energy weapons powering up. The Federation soldiers were arrayed across the field, ready to engage. Remember our training, I reminded them, my voice firm. Stay focused, stay sharp. As the battle commenced, the chaos erupted. Plasma bolts lit up the arena, and I found myself moving instinctively, ducking behind cover as we exchanged fire. Voss let loose with his rifle, each shot finding its mark, while Vera coordinated our movements, relaying information as the simulation unfolded. The Federation soldiers fought well, their discipline and training evident. But we had our own strengths, our creativity and unpredictability. We were not bound by the same rigid tactics, and I used that to our advantage. We moved fluidly, adapting as the situation evolved, and I could feel the tide of battle shifting in our favor. As the simulation progressed, I could see the skepticism in the Federation leaders' faces beginning to fade. They were watching us work, witnessing our synergy in action. We pushed forward, using our environment to our advantage, maneuvering with a blend of calculated strategy and instinctual agility. "Now," I shouted, signaling Vera and Voss to execute the final phase of our plan. We rushed forward, utilizing a combination of smoke grenades and tactical positioning to confuse our opponents. The Federation soldiers fell back, their ranks breaking as we surged ahead, relentless in our pursuit of victory. It was exhilarating, and for a moment I felt invincible, buoyed by the adrenaline of the fight and the camaraderie we shared. "Push through," Vera urged, her voice a clarion call in the chaos. "We can win this." With one final push, we overwhelmed the last of the simulation's defenders, standing victorious as the alarm signaled the end of the scenario. I could hardly believe it. We had done it. The arena erupted into cheers from the onlookers, and I turned to face the Federation leaders, who were now on their feet, a mix of astonishment and respect etched across their faces. I caught Reith's gaze, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of genuine admiration reflected there. "Captain Marlowe," he said, his voice strong and unwavering, "you have proven that humanity is not only capable of standing alongside us, but worthy of our alliance. Your people have earned our respect." My heart swelled at his words. It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for every human who had fought, bled, and sacrificed to reach this moment. "Thank you, Ambassador Reith. We look forward to working together." As the cheers continued, I felt a surge of pride wash over me. We had overcome the odds, shattered their preconceived notions, and established ourselves as worthy players in this complex game of galactic politics. Humanity was finally recognized, not as a novelty or a curiosity, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Federation leaders began to discuss the terms of our alliance, their voices rising in excitement as they outlined plans for collaboration. I stood among my team, sharing in the triumph of our victory. We had fought hard for this moment, and it was ours. The galaxy had changed that day, and humanity was no longer relegated to the sidelines. We were ready to claim our place among the stars. As I glanced around the room, my gaze settled on Voss and Vera, their faces light by the light of possibility. I couldn't help but smile, knowing this was just the beginning. Together, we would forge a future that would echo through the cosmos, respected and feared, as worthy players in the galaxy. With the alliance secured, I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. The hard-fought respect we'd earned was only the first step. I envisioned what lay ahead, a future of cooperation, innovation, and mutual growth. But I also knew that our path wouldn't be without challenges. There would always be those who resisted change, who clung to old beliefs and fears. The Federation was a vast entity, and not everyone would embrace humanity's integration. I took a deep breath, allowing the energy of the moment to fuel my resolve. "Let's show them what humanity can do," I said, glancing at my team. "We're just getting started." As we prepared to step into the next phase of our journey, I felt a sense of purpose like never before. The stars were ours for the taking, and we would not back down. We had earned our place in the galaxy, and now it was time to truly make our mark. Together, we would face whatever came our way, forging alliances, overcoming obstacles, and proving that humanity was not just a footnote in the annals of galactic history. We were here to stay, respected, feared, and ready to take on the universe. I stood in the shadows of the massive Federation Assembly Hall, my heart racing as the buzz of conversations filled the air. Diplomacy had given way to something more dangerous, and I could feel it in my bones. The stark reality of our situation weighed heavily on me, especially after the recent meetings. Humanity's newfound status in the Federation was both a blessing and a curse. "Eli, are you ready?" Voss asked, his voice a mix of excitement and anxiety. He fidgeted with the edge of his uniform. the bright fabric contrasting sharply with the metallic hues of the hall. "Ready for what?" I replied, arching an eyebrow at him. "To get mocked again? I hope you've practiced your deep breathing." "Very funny. No, I mean for the briefing. There's something brewing, and I think it's serious." I turned my attention to the large holo-screen projected above us, which displayed the Federation emblem. I hadn't missed the tension in the air during our last discussions. There were whispers among the elites. Those who had mocked us now seemed more apprehensive. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were sitting on a powder keg, and someone was about to light the fuse. As the assembly began, a tall alien with light skin and piercing green eyes stepped to the front. "We convene today to address the recent display of human technology," she announced, her voice clear and commanding. "While we acknowledge the efficacy of your weaponry, we must consider the ramifications of allowing such primitive technology a seat at our table." I felt a fire ignite in my chest. Primitives? Sure, our tech had been labeled as toys before, but those toys had saved our asses more times than I could count. I exchanged glances with Voss and Vera, both of whom looked equally furious. "Make no mistake," the alien continued, her tone shifting to something more accusatory. "Your presence among us cannot be taken lightly. Many in this assembly still question whether humanity should be considered equals in our Federation." "Equals?" I muttered under my breath. "They think we're not even in the same league." Vera leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "We need to be cautious. They're testing us. If we show any weakness..." "Right. But what can we do?" I shot back, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. "We need to show them that we belong here." Suddenly, the assembly hall doors burst open, and a squad of Federation guards strode in, their armor gleaming under the harsh lights. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, curiosity and concern mingling in the atmosphere. A commander stepped forward, gesturing for silence. "An incident has occurred. We believe an attack may be imminent. Tensions among factions have escalated, and we are on high alert." The assembly erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions, and the atmosphere shifted from diplomatic to dangerous in mere moments. I felt adrenaline flooding my system, sharpening my senses. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a powder keg about to blow. "Eli, we need to move," Voss said urgently, glancing toward the exit. "If they're really on high alert." "No," I said, my voice firm. "We can't just run. We need to figure out what's happening first. The Federation is divided, and we might be caught in the crossfire." "Divided factions?" Vera echoed, her eyes wide. "Do you think it's related to the sabotage of our weapons?" "Possibly," I replied, considering the implications. "They're afraid of us. That makes us a target. We have to stay vigilant." Before we could discuss further, an explosion rocked the building, sending debris raining down from the ceiling. The crowd panicked, people scrambling for cover as alarms blared throughout the hall. Voss shouted, ducking behind a nearby pillar as shards of metal fell like confetti. "We need to get out of here." "Not yet," I yelled over the cacophony. "We need to assess the situation. Stay low." As we maneuvered through the chaos, I caught glimpses of Federation guards rallying and shouting orders. They were forming a perimeter, but I could see fear in their eyes. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than just a simple riot. I spotted a figure darting through the smoke, a familiar silhouette. "Is that?" I began, but the figure was gone before I could finish my thought. Then, another explosion erupted outside, shaking the building to its core. The noise echoed in my ears, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath me. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the hall. "We need to find out who's behind this," I said, adrenaline fueling my determination. "We can't let them take us down without a fight." Voss nodded, his expression resolute. "Let's get to the armory. If we're going to face whatever's out there, we need to be ready." We maneuvered through the hall, weaving between the chaos as we made our way toward the exit. The hallways were lined with Federation soldiers rushing to respond to the explosions, their faces set with grim determination. As we exited into the open air, the scene was chaotic. Fire raged in the distance, and I could see Federation guards engaging in combat with shadowy figures obscured by smoke. I squinted, trying to identify the attackers. They were organized, and I could see they were utilizing advanced weaponry, something that made my gut churn. "Are those rebels?" Vera gasped, pointing toward the chaotic melee. "Looks like it," I said grimly. "Factions that think they can undermine the Federation. We're right in the middle of a war." "We need to get to the armory," Voss insisted. "We can't fight without our gear." I nodded, my heart racing as we sprinted toward the nearest supply station. The air was thick with smoke, and the sounds of chaos reverberated around us. Each step felt heavy, every corner we turned fraught with the possibility of ambush. Finally, we reached the armory, and I pushed through the door, relief washing over me as I spotted our gear stacked neatly along the wall. "Grab what you can," I shouted, urgency flooding my voice. "We need to gear up fast." We began equipping ourselves, the familiar weight of our weapons a comforting presence as I strapped on my combat gear. The quick clicks of armor plates fitting into place filled the air as we prepared for what was to come. "Eli, look," Vera said, pointing to a holo display. "It's a communication feed." I leaned closer, my heart racing as I saw a live feed of the chaos outside. The broadcast was filled with panic as citizens and Federation soldiers clashed with the insurgents, who seemed intent on causing maximum destruction. "Listen to this," I said, adjusting the volume. "They're calling for an uprising against the Federation. They think we're the source of their problems." "Damn it," Voss muttered. "This is exactly what we didn't need. We've got to get control of this situation before it spirals out of hand." The urgency of the moment propelled us into action. We quickly strategized, knowing that we had to do more than just survive. We had to ensure that humanity was seen as a stabilizing force, not a pawn in this chaotic game. "Let's head to the command center," I said, determination in my voice. "We need to inform them about our findings. If we can rally support from the Federation, we might stand a chance against this uprising." We exited the armory, weapons at the ready, and moved toward the command center. The chaos outside was more intense, and as we made our way through the building, we encountered pockets of resistance. Federation guards were overwhelmed by insurgents, and we had no choice but to engage. "Stay sharp," I shouted as we encountered a group of insurgents barricading a corridor. Their uniforms were ragged, their faces obscured by masks, but their intent was clear. They were here to fight. "On my mark," I said, crouching low. "We take them out quick and clean." We moved as one, charging forward with a roar. My pulse quickened as I opened fire, the familiar kick of my weapon a welcome sensation. Voss and Vera flanked me, their shots echoing through the chaos as we pushed forward. The insurgents were caught off guard, scrambling to retaliate, but we were faster and more coordinated. With each fallen opponent, I could feel the tide shifting in our favor. "Keep moving," I shouted, driving forward. "We can't stop until we reach the command center." We cut through the group, feeling the exhilaration of combat washing over us. But as we pressed onward, the sounds of battle echoed louder, and I knew this was just the beginning. Finally, we reached the command center, bursting through the doors to find it in disarray. Federation leaders were scrambling to regain control, and chaos reigned as they tried to coordinate their response. "Eli," a voice shouted from the chaos. It was Ambassador Reith, his expression grim. "We've been trying to get a hold of you. The situation is deteriorating rapidly." "I know," I replied, trying to catch my breath. "We just fought our way through a group of insurgents. We need to establish a plan before this gets any worse." Reith nodded, his expression serious. "They're organizing more attacks. We've received reports of additional factions rallying for a full-scale revolt against the Federation." "Then we need to counter it," I said, feeling a surge of urgency. "We can't let them paint us as the enemy. If we work together, we can quell this uprising." The room buzzed with voices as everyone began to talk over each other, but I cut through the chaos. We need to send a message show that we are a united front against those who wish to divide us. Humanity can help lead this charge. Are you suggesting we take the fight to them? Reith asked, his brow furrowing. Absolutely, I replied. If we show strength, we can rally those still on the fence and demonstrate that humanity is not a threat, but a stabilizing force. The room fell silent as leaders exchanged uncertain glances. What do you propose? Another leader finally asked. An offensive, I said, my voice steady. We'll target the insurgent strongholds and dismantle their operations. With our technology and tactics, we can show them that defiance against the Federation will not be tolerated. Vera stepped forward, her determination evident. We've trained hard for this. Let us prove what we can do. We're not just here to survive, we're here to fight. Reith nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. Very well. If we can gain control of the situation, we'll not only protect humanity, but also show the Federation that we can be formidable allies. The mood in the command center shifted as plans were formulated, and my heart raced at the prospect of taking the fight to the insurgents. We were on the precipice of something big, and I knew this was our chance to prove ourselves. Let's move, I commanded, leading the charge as we gathered our team and prepared for the counteroffensive. We donned our armor, weapons at the ready, the adrenaline surging through our veins. As we exited the command center, the chaos of the battle outside hit us like a wave. The sounds of gunfire echoed, and I could see Federation soldiers engaged in intense combat against the insurgents. The air was thick with smoke, the smell of gunpowder hanging heavy. Stick together, I shouted, my voice cutting through the din. We need to clear a path. We surged into the fray, our presence igniting a spark among the Federation troops. They rallied behind us, inspired by our determination and skill. We fought side by side, moving through the chaos with precision and purpose. With every insurgent we took down, I felt a sense of liberation. This was our chance to turn the tide, to prove that humanity belonged among the stars, not as outcast but as respected warriors. Eli, left flank, Voss yelled, pointing toward a group of insurgents attempting to flank our position. On it, I replied, instinctively adjusting my aim. I fired, the sound of my weapon blending into the symphony of battle. The insurgents fell back, and I pressed forward, leading our team deeper into the chaos. As we fought our way through, we began to hear rumors that the Federation was gathering strength, preparing to counter the uprising. The news fueled our resolve, each success reinvigorating our belief that we could reclaim our place in this galaxy. Suddenly, the ground shook as another explosion rocked the area. We were thrown off balance, and I hit the ground hard, my vision swimming as dust and debris filled the air. Eli, Vera's voice broke through the chaos, sharp with concern. Are you okay? Yeah, just give me a second, I grunted, pushing myself up. The shock of the explosion faded, replaced by an intense focus. We need to keep moving. We can't lose momentum. We forged ahead, cutting a path through the insurgents with renewed determination. The battle raged on around us, and I could see Federation soldiers regaining their footing, pushing back against the insurgents' advance. Then, in the midst of the chaos, I spotted a figure, a familiar silhouette darting through the smoke. My heart raced as I recognized them. No way, I breathed. Is that who I think it is? Voss followed my gaze, eyes widening. It can't be. Before I could react, the figure turned and caught sight of us. Eli, Voss, Vera, they shouted, and I felt a jolt of recognition. Daria, I called, pushing through the crowd. What are you doing here? Rescue mission, she replied, her face a mask of determination. We're here to help you take back control of this situation. We've gathered support from other factions who want to see peace restored. Where are they? I asked, scanning the chaos for any sign of reinforcements. Just beyond the perimeter. We have to push through, Daria said, her eyes blazing with determination. Together, we can turn this battle. With Daria joining our ranks, we formed a tight unit, the familiar bond between us reigniting a fierce energy. Together, we surged forward, rallying the Federation troops behind us, pushing against the insurgents' lines. "Let's show them what humanity can do," I shouted, the words echoing in the heat of battle. The troops roared in response, inspired and emboldened. As we pressed onward, I felt a surge of hope. This was our moment. This was humanity's time to rise, to prove we were not mere toys in a larger game. We were warriors, and we were ready to claim our place among the stars. Together, we fought, and one by one, the insurgents fell back, their resolve crumbling in the face of our unified front. We carved a path through the chaos, our presence a beacon of strength amid the turmoil. Finally, we reached the heart of the insurgent stronghold, and the chaos around us began to wane. Federation soldiers fought valiantly, and I could see the tides shifting in our favor. But just as victory felt within our grasp, a familiar voice echoed through the comms, sending a chill down my spine. "Eli," it crackled, urgent and commanding. "We have a new situation on our hands. I need you to listen carefully." I glanced around, taking stock of my team as I focused on the voice. "What's happening?" "There are multiple factions among the insurgents," the voice continued. "We're tracking a powerful leader who may be orchestrating this entire attack. They're planning a last-ditch effort to escalate the violence. If we don't stop them, the Federation will be torn apart from within." "Where do we find them?" I asked, determination burning in my chest. "Gather your team and move toward the east wing of the complex. They're staging an offensive, and you need to cut them off before it's too late." "Understood," I replied, adrenaline pumping through me as I relayed the plan to my team. "We're moving. Let's end this." As we sprinted through the remaining chaos, I felt the weight of our mission bearing down on us. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for our future. We couldn't let our people down. We had to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. We navigated through the smoke and flames, the sounds of battle growing distant as we approached the east wing. The tension in the air was palpable, and every instinct in me screamed that we were getting closer to the heart of the insurgent operation. "Keep your eyes peeled," I warned, scanning the shadows. "They could be waiting for us." We reached a reinforced door, its surface marked with signs of struggle. I motioned for silence as I examined the entrance. "On three," I whispered, my heart racing. 1, 2, 3. We burst through the door, weapons raised, and what met our eyes was shocking. A group of insurgents was gathered. Their leader, a tall, imposing figure with a scar running down the side of his face, was barking orders. I started, but he turned, his eyes narrowing at the sight of us. "Humans," he sneered, drawing a weapon from his side. "You think you can stop this? You're nothing but a footnote in our history." "Then let's write a new chapter," I retorted, my resolve hardening. "It's time to end this." A fierce firefight erupted, blaster fire lighting up the room as we clashed with the insurgents. My heart pounded in my chest as I dodged behind cover, firing back at our attackers. Voss and Vera moved with precision, their training kicking in as we worked as a seamless unit. But the insurgents were fierce, and they fought with desperation. I could feel the weight of their resolve pressing down on us, but I refused to back down. We had come too far to let this moment slip away. "Push forward," I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. "We can't let them regroup." As we advanced, I caught glimpses of Daria's fierce determination, her skills shining as she fought alongside us. The tide began to turn, our coordination proving more effective than their chaotic onslaught. But just as victory felt within reach, the insurgent leader unleashed a powerful weapon, a device I had never seen before. It crackled with energy, and I realized the full scope of his plans. "No!" I shouted, rushing forward to intercept. "Don't let him use that." In a flash, the energy weapon fired, and I felt a surge of panic as it connected with the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through the room. The force knocked us off our feet, and I struggled to regain my balance. "Eli!" Voss shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Get up." I fought through the disorientation, pushing myself back to my feet. The insurgents were rallying, their desperation driving them to launch a final assault. The leader was reloading the weapon, and I knew we had to act fast. "Cover me," I shouted, charging toward him. "Eli, wait!" Vera yelled, but I couldn't stop. This was my chance to end this once and for all. I dashed forward, dodging incoming fire, and with a surge of determination, I tackled the insurgent leader to the ground. We grappled for control of the weapon, the energy crackling dangerously between us. "Humans will never win," he spat, his eyes filled with hatred. "We already have," I grunted, forcing the weapon away from him. With one final push, I knocked him aside and turned the weapon back toward the remaining insurgents. "No!" they cried out in panic as I fired, the energy beam blasting through their ranks. The force of the shot sent shockwaves through the room, scattering the insurgents like leaves in a storm. As the dust settled, I stood, breathless, surveying the aftermath. The insurgents had been defeated, their resolve shattered, and the leader lay incapacitated at my feet. "Is it over?" Voss asked, panting as he caught up to me. "For now," I replied, glancing at the chaos around us. "But the Federation won't be the same after this. We've opened a door, and I fear what lies behind it." With the insurgent threat neutralized, we returned to the command center, weary but victorious. As we stepped through the doors, I could see the relief in the eyes of the Federation leaders. They knew we had turned the tide. "Eli," Ambassador Reith said, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "You've done the impossible. You've proven that humanity is not to be underestimated." "But at what cost?" I replied, feeling the weight of our actions settle on my shoulders. "This isn't just about victory. It's about the future of our place in the galaxy." As we prepared to address the Federation Assembly, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This battle had shown us that humanity was capable of greatness, but it also revealed the challenges ahead. We were no longer just seeking acceptance. We were forging our path among the stars. "We stand united," I declared to the Assembly, my voice steady and resolute. "Today, we have shown that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. We will not back down, and we will protect our place in this galaxy." Applause erupted around the room, a thunderous response that echoed in my heart. But amid the celebration, I could feel the undercurrents of tension still lingering. The galaxy was vast and complex, and our journey was far from over. As the assembly concluded, I stepped aside, lost in thought. The future held uncertainty, but I knew one thing: humanity was no longer viewed as primitive. We were players on the galactic stage, and our story was just beginning. The dimly lit command center of the Federation was unusually quiet. A cold glow from the control panels cast eerie shadows across the walls, giving the room an atmosphere that felt more like a tomb than a hub of interstellar diplomacy. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the holographic display flickering before me. The faces of my team Voss, Vera, and Ryan were light in blue light, their expressions a mix of concern and focus. "I don't like this silence," Voss muttered, his fingers drumming anxiously on the table. "It feels like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop." Just as he spoke, the console chimed, breaking the tension. I reached for the control pad, a sense of foreboding creeping into my chest. The screen flashed a security warning before revealing a series of encrypted messages. My heart raced as I began to decode the transmission, my pulse quickening with every passing second. "It's a message from one of our contacts," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A faction within the Federation is planning something against us. They believe humanity is a threat." "What kind of threat?" Vera leaned in, her expression shifting from curiosity to alarm. I quickly scanned the message, my mind racing. "They're trying to sabotage our efforts, inciting conflict between us and the other member races. They want to make it look like humanity is the aggressor." Voss clenched his fists, a familiar anger boiling beneath the surface. "We can't let that happen. If we don't act quickly, this could escalate into a full-blown war." I nodded, trying to suppress the gnawing sense of urgency. If this is true, we're running out of time. Within minutes, we gathered our gear and prepared to infiltrate the faction headquarters. Located in the underbelly of one of the Federation's most prestigious planets, the building was heavily guarded and surrounded by a network of security protocols. Our plan was risky, but it was our only option to gather evidence of the conspiracy. "I still can't believe this is happening," Ryan said as he checked his weapon. "We've come so far, and now this." "It's typical of those in power," I replied, my voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "They'll do anything to maintain control, even if it means undermining their own allies." As we made our way through the winding corridors of the Federation's central hub, the atmosphere thickened with tension. Each step felt heavier than the last. I led the team, glancing at my wrist device that displayed the schematics of the building. "We're close," I said, pointing to a small entrance that led into the lower levels. "We need to get down there and find the data core." Voss gave me a nod, and we slipped into the shadows, our movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. As we descended, the ambient sounds of the building faded, replaced by a muffled hum of machinery. When we reached the lower level, I motioned for silence. The corridor opened up into a vast chamber, filled with humming servers and blinking lights. But the room was not empty. 2 guards stood at attention, their bodies tense, their eyes scanning the area. "Eli," Vera whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need to create a distraction." I nodded, my mind racing. "Voss, can you take one out quietly?" "Consider it done," he replied, already moving toward the nearest guard. With a swift motion, Voss crept behind the guard, a silent shadow in the dim light. He subdued him quickly and quietly, rendering him unconscious before he could make a sound. Vera and I rushed in, securing the area while Ryan kept watch. "Good work," I said, nodding at Voss as we dragged the guard out of sight. Now we had a few precious minutes. I hurried to the nearest console, fingers dancing over the controls. "I need access to the data core. If we can find evidence of their plans, we can expose them." "Make it quick," Ryan urged, his gaze darting to the entrance. "We don't have long." As I hacked into the system, my heart raced with anticipation. Lines of code and security protocols filled the screen, and I fought against the layers of encryption. Each moment felt like an eternity, and I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. Come on," I muttered under my breath, the seconds slipping away. Finally, the screen blinked green, granting me access. I began downloading files, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through the sensitive information. My stomach dropped when I discovered plans detailing sabotage of our weapons systems, coordinated attacks on our supply lines, and a comprehensive propaganda campaign to paint humanity as the enemy. "This is it," I said, my voice a mix of excitement and dread. "We've got the proof." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. My heart dropped. "Eli, we need to go now," Vera urged, her eyes wide with panic. I quickly initiated a secure upload to an external drive, while glancing at the doorway. Shadows danced on the wall as figures approached. "We're compromised," I said, shoving the drive into my pocket. "Let's move." We slipped out of the chamber just as the guards entered, ducking into the adjacent corridor. My heart raced as we sprinted down the hall, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind us. "They know we're here," Ryan shouted, his voice laced with urgency. "Get to the extraction point," I yelled back, pushing myself to run faster. We rounded a corner, taking a moment to catch our breath. "Do you think they've alerted security?" Voss panted, glancing back. "Probably," I replied, scanning the dimly lit hallway. "But we can't stop. We need to get out of here before they lock everything down." Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashing ominously as we pushed forward. The atmosphere shifted, the tension thickened. "Damn it," Vera cursed, her eyes darting around for an escape route. "We need a plan." "Head for the service tunnels," I said, recalling the schematics. "They'll lead us to the lower levels where we can find a way out." We took off again, darting through the twisting hallways, weaving around corners as we heard the echoes of footsteps gaining on us. The adrenaline surged through my veins, sharpening my focus. As we reached the entrance to the service tunnels, I skidded to a halt. In here. We squeezed into the narrow passage, pushing past wires and ductwork. The tunnels were cramped, the air thick with dust and stale smells. I turned to the team, my voice low. We need to split up. It'll confuse them. No way, Vera shot back, her eyes wide with fear. We stick together. It's safer that way. Safer? I countered, urgency in my tone. If we're caught together, they'll take us out. We need to create a diversion. We can't risk everything on one shot. Voss looked between us, then nodded slowly. Eli's right. We can regroup at the rendezvous point. If one of us can get out, we can bring help. Fine, Vera relented, her expression hardening. Let's do this. I pressed a hand to Vera's shoulder. We'll make it. Just keep your heads down. We split up, slipping deeper into the tunnels. I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down, but I had to focus. As I crept forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching me, that the darkness held dangers beyond the obvious. I moved cautiously through the narrow passageways, listening for any sign of pursuit. The tunnels twisted and turned, the sounds of alarms fading into an eerie silence. My mind raced as I considered the implications of what we'd uncovered. A rogue faction plotting to incite war. This was bigger than I had imagined. Humanity had worked so hard to build alliances, and now it felt like the ground was shifting beneath our feet. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a maintenance room. The door was ajar, and the flickering light inside beckoned me. I slipped in, quickly scanning for anything that could be useful. A terminal blinked to life, its screen displaying data feeds and security cameras throughout the building. I approached, my fingers hovering over the controls. If I could gather more information, it might give us the leverage we needed to expose the faction's plans. I hacked into the system, my heart pounding as I accessed the security feeds. The grainy images revealed guards patrolling the hallways, their expressions tense and alert. I scrolled through the cameras, my breath catching when I spotted Vera and Ryan, cornered in another passage. They were surrounded. Damn it, I cursed, frustration boiling over. I needed to warn them. With a quick command, I set the terminal to loop the security feed, buying myself some time. I opened a communications channel, but the signal was weak. Vera, I whispered, hoping my voice would reach her. Get out of there, they're on to you. Static filled the line before Vera's voice crackled through. Eli, we're surrounded. We can't fight our way out. Hold on, I'll find another route, I replied, scanning the feeds for alternate exits. Suddenly, the door to the maintenance room creaked open, and I froze. Two figures stepped inside, scanning the room. I ducked behind a control panel, my heart pounding as I listened to their conversation. Did you hear? The humans are here, one of the guards said, his voice low. They're going to pay for their meddling. Let's make sure they don't escape, the other replied, a cruel smile spreading across his face. I want to see their precious technology brought to its knees. Their words sent a chill down my spine. They intended to eradicate us before we could expose their plot. I needed to act quickly. I waited until they turned their backs, then lunged forward, catching one off guard and bringing him down silently. The other turned, but I was faster, disarming him and delivering a quick strike to incapacitate him. Breathing heavily, I dragged their bodies out of sight, then returned to the terminal, my mind racing. I needed to gather evidence of their actions, something that would expose them to the entire Federation. With shaking hands, I began downloading files, pulling up blueprints and communications logs. I could see the intricate web of lies they had spun, the careful planning to undermine humanity's integration into the Federation. The deeper I delved, the more evidence I found, each piece confirming the magnitude of their treachery. Just as I finished downloading the data, the door creaked open again. My heart raced as I prepared for a fight. This time, it was Vera and Ryan. Their faces were grim, and I could see the tension etched into their features. Eli, Vera gasped, her eyes darting around the room. We need to move. They know we're here. Not yet, I replied, showing them the files I had gathered. I got evidence of their plans. We can expose them. Ryan's eyes widened as he scanned the data on the screen. This is huge. If we get this back to the Federation, we can turn the tide. Just then, the alarms blared louder, and the overhead lights flickered. We've got company, Vera said, urgency flooding her voice. What's the plan? We need to make a stand, I replied, my heart racing. If we can hold them off long enough, we can escape through the service hatch at the end of this corridor. We can't let them take this evidence, Ryan said, clenching his jaw. Let's fight. With renewed determination, we prepared ourselves for the confrontation. Vera positioned herself by the entrance, weapon drawn, while Ryan and I took cover behind the control panel. The door burst open, and a squad of guards flooded in, weapons raised. Surrender, one of them shouted. You're surrounded. I exchanged a glance with Vera, and we both nodded. Not today, I growled, raising my weapon and firing a shot that struck one of the guards square in the chest. The sound of gunfire echoed in the small space, and chaos erupted. Vera moved with precision, taking down another guard with a swift shot. Ryan covered us, firing into the advancing wave, but they were relentless. Eli, we need to move, Vera shouted, ducking behind cover. I turned to the terminal, grabbing the external drive and tucking it safely into my pocket. Let's go. We charged toward the exit, pushing through the guards as we fought our way out. Adrenaline surged through me, sharpening my senses as I fired and dodged, each movement a testament to our training and determination. As we made our way down the corridor, the lights flickered ominously, and I could hear the sound of reinforcements approaching. They're calling for backup, I panted, urgency creeping into my voice. We need to find an exit now. Vera led the way, her instincts guiding us through the maze of corridors. We finally reached the service hatch at the end of a dimly lit passage. Here, she shouted, throwing the hatch open. We scrambled inside, slamming it shut behind us just as the sounds of boots echoed down the corridor. We descended the narrow shaft, the darkness enveloping us. My heart raced as we climbed down, the urgency of our situation pressing against me like a weight. Are we safe? Ryan whispered, his voice low. For now, I replied, but I knew we had to keep moving. We reached the bottom of the shaft, emerging into a dusty maintenance bay filled with old machinery. My mind raced with possibilities. We need a way off this planet, I said, glancing around for any signs of a shuttle or transport. There, Vera pointed to an old cargo ship tucked away in the corner, its engines dormant but intact. We can use that. We sprinted towards it, our hearts pounding with adrenaline. I quickly checked the controls, praying the ship hadn't been decommissioned. Eli, hurry, Ryan urged, scanning the area for signs of pursuit. Just a minute, I replied, flipping switches and activating the power systems. The ship whirred to life, lights flickering as I initiated the startup sequence. Get in, Vera shouted, clambering inside. Ryan followed, and I slid into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls as I prepared for launch. The ship's engines roared to life, and I felt a surge of hope. But before we could take off, the entrance to the bay exploded open, and a squad of guards rushed in, weapons raised. Damn it, I cursed, heart racing as I punched the thrusters. We need to go, now. I hit the ignition, and the ship lurched forward, barreling through the bay as I fought to keep it steady. The guards opened fire, rounds pinging off the hull, but I focused on the controls, maneuvering the ship toward the open space beyond. Just as we broke free of the bay, I glanced back to see guards pouring in behind us, their faces twisted with rage. Go, 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 Vera shouted, her voice a mix of fear and determination. I punched the throttle, feeling the surge of speed as we shot into the atmosphere. The stars blinked above us, and I could hear the distant wail of alarms fading into the background. As we reached the safety of space, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The ship's systems stabilized, and I set a course for our rendezvous point with the Federation fleet. Did we make it? Ryan asked, his expression a mixture of relief and disbelief. "For now," I replied, glancing at the external monitor displaying the fading planetary atmosphere behind us. "But we need to get this evidence back to the Federation. We can't let them use our technology against us." Vera leaned back in her seat, her face pale but determined. "We have what we need. We can expose the faction's plans and rally support for humanity." I nodded, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. "Let's hope it's enough." As we flew into the depths of space, I felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. The fragile peace we had fought so hard to achieve was hanging by a thread, and the rogue faction's betrayal loomed large in my mind. But now, armed with evidence and the resolve to fight for our place in the galaxy, we would not back down. We would expose the treachery lurking in the shadows and show the Federation that humanity was not a threat to be extinguished, but an ally worth fighting alongside. As I navigated the stars, I glanced at my team, their faces set with determination. Together, we would face whatever came next, ready to fight for our future and protect our hard-won place in the galaxy. The stars stretched before us, each one a reminder of the challenges ahead, and I knew that our journey was far from over. But for now, we had triumphed against the darkness, proving that even in the shadows of betrayal, humanity would rise, united and unyielding. I stood on the observation deck of the MSS Endeavour, gazing out at the vibrant landscape of Zeros Prime, a neutral planet chosen for its lush vegetation and serene environment. The swirling hues of purple and orange from the planet's unique atmosphere mixed with the sun's golden rays, creating a surreal scene that was almost intoxicating. Yet, despite the breathtaking view, a sense of unease settled deep within me. "I can't shake the feeling that we're walking into a trap," I muttered, crossing my arms as I leaned against the cold metal railing. Vera, my trusted comrade and tactical analyst, approached from behind. "It's not paranoia if it's based on previous experiences," she replied, her voice steady yet laced with concern. "After the rogue faction's failed assassination attempt, it's understandable to feel apprehensive." "You think the people we're meeting with have ties to them?" I asked, not wanting to voice my worries aloud. She sighed, her gaze also drifting toward the vibrant landscape. "It's possible. The more we rise within the Federation, the more enemies we make. We need to be cautious." "Caution is our middle name," Voss chimed in as he joined us, his ever-enthusiastic demeanor in stark contrast to our somber conversation. He had a way of lightening the mood, but this time I could see the tension in his eyes too. "Just think about the trade agreements we'll secure. It'll elevate humanity's standing like never before." "Yes, and it could also make us a target," I reminded him. "Stay sharp." As we prepared to disembark from the ship, the buzz of anticipation and apprehension filled the air. We had been sent to negotiate crucial trade agreements with the Zerosian government, who had expressed interest in our advanced technology in exchange for rare minerals found only on their planet. It was a win-win situation, but there was still the nagging feeling in my gut that we were stepping into a lion's den. The ship landed smoothly on the landing platform, and we made our way down the ramp. The Zerosian delegates awaited us, their appearance striking and their mannerisms distinctly different from our own. They were tall, their skin shimmering in shades of blue and green, adorned with biolite patterns that pulsed gently, as if echoing their emotions. "Welcome, representatives of humanity," their leader, a regal figure named Aloria, greeted us, her voice melodic yet commanding. "We are pleased to see you." "We appreciate your hospitality," I replied, forcing a smile despite the unease gnawing at me. As we exchanged pleasantries, I kept my senses alert, scanning our surroundings. The air felt thick with tension, and I couldn't help but notice the subtle glances shared among the Zerosians. Were they merely being polite, or was there something more ominous behind their smiles? The first meeting commenced in a grand chamber adorned with shimmering crystals and intricate carvings that told the history of their people. Our delegation was seated at a circular table, with me, Vera, and Voss on one side and the Zerosian leaders on the other. As the discussions began, I did my best to focus on the negotiations, but the feeling of being watched never left me. Your technology could greatly enhance our mining capabilities, Eloria stated, her eyes piercing through me. The minerals we possess are unlike anything you've encountered. We're eager to explore this partnership, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. In return, we would like access to your resources to further develop our infrastructure. The negotiations flowed, with both sides discussing potential trade routes and technological exchanges. Yet, as the conversation progressed, the tension in the room grew palpable. Vera leaned in closer, whispering, "I sense underlying hostility. We need to watch our backs." "Agreed," I muttered, trying to keep my focus on the discussions. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the chamber's atmosphere shifted. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the building, drowning out Eloria's voice. "What is happening?" I demanded, my heart racing. "Breach! Intruders detected!" a Zerosian guard shouted, rushing to the door. "Stay low," I barked, instinctively reaching for the weapon at my side, the sleek design of my plasma pistol reassuring against my palm. Voss moved to shield Eloria as she raised her hands, confusion evident on her face. "This cannot be happening. We are not at war." "Tell that to the people trying to kill us," I snapped, peering out the door as shadows darted in the corridor outside. "Eli, we need to secure the perimeter," Vera urged, moving into action. "We can't let them breach this room." I nodded, formulating a plan. "Voss, stay with Eloria. Make sure she's safe. Vera, you and I will handle the intruders." Voss hesitated, glancing between Eloria and me. "You sure?" "Trust me. We'll be fine. Just keep her safe," I insisted. Without another word, we dashed toward the door, Vera leading the way. The chaos outside was overwhelming. Zerosian guards were engaged in fierce combat with a group of unknown assailants. They were heavily armed, their uniforms dark and menacing, but their motives were unclear. "Who are they?" Vera shouted over the sounds of blaster fire. "Unknown," I yelled back, firing my weapon at one of the assailants who aimed at a Zerosian guard. The bolt hit its mark, and the assailant staggered back, a look of shock on his face. "Move, Eli," Vera shouted, pushing me aside as she took aim. Her shots were precise, and I marveled at her quick reflexes even amid the chaos. "Let's flank them," I shouted, leading us around the edge of the chamber. We needed to take out the threat quickly. As we moved through the halls, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a simple ambush. Someone wanted to derail these negotiations, and I was determined to find out who. We rounded a corner, and a group of assailants appeared, caught off guard by our presence. "Human," one of them sneered, aiming his weapon at me. "Wrong move," I growled, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire that forced them back. Vera followed my lead, covering my flank as we pushed forward. "Eli, over there," she shouted, pointing to a staircase leading to a lower level. "We can trap them." "Let's go," I urged, sprinting down the stairs with her close behind. The sounds of combat faded slightly as we descended, but I knew it wouldn't be long before they followed us. As we reached the lower level, we found ourselves in a dimly lit corridor. "This might be a dead end," Vera warned, scanning the shadows. "We need to find a way out." "Look," I pointed at a door at the far end. "It leads to the power core. If we can secure it, we can cut off their reinforcements." With determination fueling our steps, we rushed toward the door. I forced it open, revealing a vast chamber filled with pulsating energy conduits and blinking consoles. The air crackled with electricity, a testament to the Zerosians' advanced technology. "Eli, we need to hurry," Vera urged, already moving toward the main control panel. "Cover me," I shouted, moving to flank the entrance. I could hear the footsteps of the assailants approaching, their voices low and conspiratorial. "Do you think the Zerosians will ever allow humanity into the Federation?" one of them sneered. "They'll see us as a threat, just like everyone else." "Just shut up and focus on the mission," another snapped back. "Take out the humans." "Now," I yelled, as the first assailant stepped through the door. I fired without hesitation, the shot hitting him square in the chest. "Get back," Vera yelled, typing rapidly on the console. "I'm overriding the security system. We need to shut down their access." The other assailants poured into the room, and I could feel the tension rising as we fought to hold them off. Vera's fingers danced across the controls, and I could see her concentrating, sweat glistening on her forehead. "Eli, we're almost there," she shouted, ducking behind a console as blaster fire ricocheted off the walls. "Just a little longer," I grunted, firing again as another assailant advanced. We were running low on cover, and I could feel the urgency of the situation bearing down on us. "Got it," Vera exclaimed suddenly, her eyes brightening. "I've initiated lockdown protocols. They won't be able to get reinforcements." "Good. Now let's turn the tide," I said, pushing forward. "Let's show them what humanity can do." With the power core secure, the tide began to shift. As I fired at the assailants, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. "For humanity," I yelled, charging forward. Vera joined me, her determination matching my own as we worked in sync to fend off the attackers. I could see the fear in their eyes as we pressed forward, relentless in our defense. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last assailant fell. We stood panting, surveying the chaos we had wrought. "Is it over?" Vera asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "For now," I replied, my heart still racing. "But we need to regroup with Voss and Eloria." As we turned to leave, the room flooded with light, and a familiar figure appeared at the doorway. "Eli," Voss exclaimed, his eyes wide. "We were looking for you." "Where's Eloria?" I asked, scanning the corridor for signs of danger. "She's safe. We managed to hold off the attackers, but I don't know how many more are out there," he replied, relief washing over his face. "Then we need to get back to the negotiation chamber and secure the area," I said, glancing back at Vera. "Let's move." We retraced our steps, my instincts on high alert. The atmosphere felt charged with residual tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we had not seen the last of our attackers. As we entered the negotiation chamber, I found Eloria surrounded by her guards, her expression a mixture of gratitude and concern. "You made it," she exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "I feared the worst." "We handled it," I replied, glancing at Voss and Vera. "But we need to be on guard. This attack was coordinated, and there may be more coming." "Indeed," Eloria agreed, her voice steady. "We cannot let this ambush derail our negotiations. The fate of our alliance hangs in the balance." I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "Let's not waste any time. We need to reaffirm our commitment to each other and ensure our enemies know that we stand united." With renewed determination, we gathered around the negotiation table once more, preparing to continue our discussions despite the chaos that had unfolded. As we spoke, I could sense the tension still lingering in the air. But this time, we were ready. We were prepared to fight for our place in the galaxy, and nothing would deter us. Hours passed, and the discussions flowed, punctuated by the urgency of our recent encounter. Eloria proved to be a skilled negotiator, her resolve unwavering even in the face of danger. "We will not allow fear to dictate our choices," she declared, her voice steady as she addressed her fellow delegates. I could feel the tides turning. As we negotiated terms for our trade agreement, I realized that we were no longer just representatives of humanity. We were vital players in the Federation, forging bonds that would not easily be broken. Finally, as the sun began to set on Zeros Prime, casting the room in warm golden hues, we reached an agreement. The exchange of technology for minerals would proceed, and a framework for future cooperation was established. As we concluded the meeting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. We had faced the storm head-on and emerged victorious. "We did it," Vera said, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Humanity has secured its place in this galaxy." "Not just our place," I replied, looking around the chamber. "We've proven that we're a force to be reckoned with." As the delegates began to disperse, Eloria approached me, her demeanor serious. "Eli, I appreciate your leadership today. You've shown great courage, and I believe this alliance will strengthen our worlds." "Thank you," I said, grateful for her acknowledgement. "But the real test lies ahead. We need to remain vigilant." "Yes," she agreed, her eyes narrowing. "The enemies of our cooperation will not rest. But together, we will face whatever challenges arise." With that, we exited the chamber, stepping into the vibrant landscape of Zero's Prime. The chaos of the day faded into the background, replaced by the hopeful anticipation of what lay ahead. As I gazed out at the horizon, I realized that while we had faced a storm today, we were ready for whatever came next. Humanity had found its footing, and together with our allies, we would rise to meet the challenges of the galaxy. The calm before the storm had passed, but we would not be caught off guard again. Together, we would forge a new path, united against the forces that sought to undermine us. The following weeks were filled with preparations as we began to implement the terms of our newly formed alliance. Humanity's technological prowess blended with the Zerosians' unique resources, and the results were staggering. But as the days turned into weeks, the tension in the galaxy began to shift once more. Whispers of dissent echoed through the corridors of power, and I could sense the shadows of our enemies gathering. We were far from safe, but with our allies at our side, I felt a surge of determination. Humanity had faced adversity before, and we would do so again, rising stronger with each challenge. As I stood on the observation deck once more, I gazed out at the stars, the vast unknown stretching before me. Whatever lay ahead, we would be ready to face it together. The flickering blue light lit the command center as the holographic projection sprang to life. I leaned forward, my heart racing, watching the form of the alien ambassador materialize in front of me. His features were sharp and angular, a chilling reminder of the empire that had long considered humanity a nuisance rather than a threat. "Humanity's time is over," the ambassador sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have overstepped your bounds in the Federation. We will reclaim what is rightfully ours." The arrogance in his tone ignited a spark of anger within me. I exchanged glances with my team, each of us sensing the weight of this moment. Humanity had fought hard to carve a place in the galaxy, and now we were about to be challenged by an empire that viewed us as nothing more than a fledgling species. "Eli," Voss said, his voice steady, "we need to act. If they're planning an invasion, we can't afford to be caught off guard." I nodded, trying to shake off the unease settling in my gut. "Gather the others. We need to call a meeting with the Federation leaders. We have to rally our allies before it's too late." A few hours later, we gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall, the air thick with tension. Federation leaders from various races took their seats, their eyes focused on me and my team. As I stood before them, I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on my shoulders. "Thank you for convening on such short notice," I began, scanning the room. "We have a serious threat from the Valorian Empire. Their ambassador has made it clear they are preparing for war. We need to unite our forces and strategize a response." Murmurs filled the hall, some leaders expressing disbelief while others showed concern. I glanced at Ambassador Reith, who had always been a supporter of humanity. He rose to address the assembly. "Eli speaks the truth. We've seen the Valorian Empire's aggression before. They won't hesitate to use brute force to achieve their goals. We must act decisively," he urged. "Decisively?" snapped a Thrix representative, his voice sharp as a knife. "And what can your kind possibly contribute? Your primitive technology pales in comparison to what the Valorians possess." Voss clenched his fists, and I stepped in quickly to defuse the situation. "I understand your concerns, but we've proven time and again that humanity can rise to any challenge. We've developed new strategies and weaponry since our last confrontation." "What do you propose?" asked a stout, green-skinned leader from the Zelthar race, who had remained silent until now. "We gather our forces," I said, heart pounding. "We need to form a coalition that showcases our strength. Together, we can face the Valorian threat head-on." A reluctant nod from Ambassador Reith was enough to spark a flicker of hope. "Then let's organize an immediate summit with our allies. We can't let the Valorians see us divided. Weeks passed, and our coalition began to take shape. Tensions were high, and every day brought new reports of Valorian movements. I could feel the anticipation building as we awaited the final confirmation of our allied forces. One evening, as I sat in my quarters reviewing tactical reports, Vera knocked and entered without waiting for a response. "Eli, you need to see this." She activated the holo screen, revealing a live feed from an observation post near the Valorian border. I leaned closer, heart racing as I watched the fleet assembling. "They're launching," I whispered. "We need to move now." I rushed to the command center, where my team and the Federation leaders were gathered. "The Valorians are on the move. We need to execute our plan immediately. Call our allies and prepare for defense." As the fleets assembled in the outer reaches of the Solarian system, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. The Federation ships were a diverse mix of designs, showcasing the unity we had forged. But the sheer size of the Valorian fleet was daunting. The view from the command deck was breathtaking and terrifying. Hundreds of Valorian warships glimmered ominously against the backdrop of space, their hulls sleek and menacing. I turned to my crew, determination burning in my chest. "This is it, everyone. We've trained for this moment, and now it's time to show them what humanity and our allies can do. No matter what happens, we stand together." Voss grinned, gripping his weapon. "I've waited my whole life for a chance to put these bastards in their place." As we prepared for battle, the communication system crackled to life. "Eli, this is Admiral Threx of the Thrix fleet. We're in position and ready to engage. What are your orders?" "Admiral, hold your position until we make contact," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "We need to draw them in before we unleash everything we have." "Understood. We're counting on you." The moment the first shots were fired, the entire command deck erupted into chaos. My hands danced over the controls, coordinating our movements as explosions lit up the void outside. "Eli, we've got multiple enemy ships approaching our flank," Vera shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "We need to pull back and regroup." "No, we can't retreat," I yelled back, my heart racing. "We have to hold the line." The ship shuddered as we took a direct hit. Alarms blared, and I felt the vibrations of the blast reverberating through the hull. "Status report," I barked. "Shields at 60% and dropping," Voss replied, adjusting his aim as he took out a Valorian fighter. "We need to reinforce that left flank." "Reinforcements are on the way," Vera called out, her fingers flying over the control panel. "The Thrix fleet is engaging, but they're being overwhelmed." I glanced at the battlefield, my mind racing. We had to adapt and change tactics. "Vera, can you access the fleet's command codes? We need to coordinate an immediate counteroffensive." "Already on it," she replied, her face set in concentration. "Establishing communications with our forces now." As we fought back against the relentless onslaught, I could see the tide beginning to turn. The Thrix forces held strong, their weaponry tearing through the Valorian ranks. But the Valorians were tenacious, their ships absorbing damage and retaliating with ruthless efficiency. "Eli, we need to fall back and regroup," Voss shouted, firing another round. "We're losing ships fast." "No, we press on," I insisted, feeling a surge of determination. "We're humanity's last line of defense. If we don't fight now, we risk everything we've built." Vera suddenly looked up, her eyes wide. "Eli, look." I turned to see a massive Valorian flagship, its weaponry charging. It unleashed a barrage of fire, and I knew we had to disable it quickly. "We take that ship down, and the rest will fall." "Voss, can you and Vera create a diversion?" I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. "Leave it to us," Voss replied, a fierce grin on his face. "Go, now," I shouted, watching as they rushed to prepare for the daring maneuver. As my team executed their plan, I commanded the rest of our fleet to focus fire on the flagship. Explosions erupted all around us, but we pressed forward, determination fueling our every move. "Divert all power to the forward shields," I ordered, bracing myself as we surged toward the enemy ship. "We need to get close." "Shields holding at 30%, Vera shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "We're almost in range." "Now, fire everything we've got," I roared, my pulse pounding in my ears. The ship shook violently as our weapons unleashed a torrent of fire. The flagship took hit after hit, its shields flickering under the relentless barrage. I could see the crew on the bridge working frantically, their desperation palpable. But then, the unthinkable happened. An explosion rocked our ship, throwing me to the ground. I scrambled to regain my footing, panic gripping my chest as I realized we'd lost power. "Eli, we're dead in the water," Vera shouted, her voice laced with fear. "Not yet," I said, my voice steadying as I crawled back to my station. "We can still fight. Voss and Vera are out there. We can't let them down." With the last of my strength, I managed to re-establish communications with Voss and Vera. "We need to combine our firepower and take that flagship down now," I urged. "On it," Vera shouted back, her determination shining through. Diverting power to the main cannons. As the two teams coordinated their final attack, the flagship's shields flickered one last time before collapsing under the combined assault. The ship shuddered violently before exploding in a massive fireball that lit up the darkness of space. Cheers erupted from our command deck, but I felt a pang of sorrow for the lives lost in the battle. "We did it," Voss said, panting heavily as he returned to the command center. "We actually did it." "Not yet," I replied, looking out at the chaos around us. "We need to make sure the rest of their fleet knows we're not to be trifled with." With a flagship destroyed, the Valorian forces began to retreat, their arrogance shattered. We had proven that humanity, alongside our allies, could hold our own against even the most powerful foes. Days passed as we assessed the damage and honored our fallen comrades. The Federation leaders recognized our efforts, and the respect for humanity grew even stronger. As I stood before a gathering of leaders from across the Federation, I felt a surge of pride and hope. We've faced the darkness together and emerged stronger than ever. This battle was not just about survival, it was about unity and the strength we possess when we stand as one. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and I knew that humanity had solidified its place in the galaxy. The Valorian Empire had underestimated us, and now they knew the consequences of their arrogance. "Let this be a lesson to all who challenge us," I declared, my voice resolute. "Humanity is no longer a mere curiosity. We are a force to be reckoned with, and we will protect our future." In the weeks that followed, the coalition continued to strengthen, and I found solace in the relationships we had built. The Valorian threat still lingered, but now we faced it with a sense of purpose and determination. As I stood on the observation deck of our ship, gazing out at the stars, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and new challenges awaited us. But I knew one thing: we would face them together, united as allies and as friends. I stood before the assembly, the weight of countless eyes upon me, a sensation I had grown accustomed to over the years, yet never truly embraced. The hall was immense, filled with representatives from various factions within the Federation, each more alien and intricate than the last. The air buzzed with a mix of anticipation and apprehension, reflecting the tension that hung thick like a fog over our newly minted alliances. "Today is not just a celebration of our victories, but a step towards our future," I began, my voice steady despite the multitude of emotions swirling within me. The hall quieted, and I could see the flicker of skepticism in the eyes of some, while others nodded with cautious optimism. It had been a tumultuous journey to get here. From being mocked for our primitive technology to standing as equal players among the stars, humanity had faced insurmountable odds. I thought back to our early days within the Federation, when we fought not just for survival, but for respect. Each battle, each negotiation, and each moment of camaraderie forged bonds that had shaped our path. As I spoke, I glanced at my team Voss, Vera, and the others sitting in the front row, their expressions a mixture of pride and anxiety. They had been my family in this strange new world, each of us having endured our own trials and tribulations. Together, we had faced the might of the Arcturus Empire, and now it was our turn to advocate for a place within this vast and complex galaxy. The defeat of the Arcturus Empire was not just a military victory. It was a testament to our resilience, our ingenuity, and our unwavering determination to carve out our destiny, I continued, feeling the fervor of my words igniting a spark in the assembly. We must not forget the cost of this victory. Countless lives were lost, and our resolve was tested to its very limits. It is our responsibility now to ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain. The murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but I could see dissent simmering beneath the surface. Some factions still viewed humanity with suspicion, unwilling to fully embrace our role in the Federation. As I paused, I took a deep breath, recalling the challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and fraught with danger, and while we had achieved much, our fight for acceptance was far from over. While we celebrate our achievements, we must also acknowledge the fragility of our alliances, I said, shifting my gaze to the leaders of the opposing factions seated in the back. The wounds of conflict run deep, and there are those who would seek to undermine the progress we've made. It is imperative that we approach the future with caution and unity. The tension in the room thickened, and I could sense the conflicting emotions swirling like a tempest. I remembered the hostility we faced from the Arcturus Empire, how they viewed us as nothing more than a nuisance, an insect to be crushed underfoot. Yet, here we stood, having faced their onslaught and emerged victorious. The gravity of that reality hung heavily on my shoulders. As I prepared to continue, I caught sight of Ambassador Reith, his expression solemn. I knew he shared my concerns about the precarious state of our alliances. He had been a steadfast ally, helping to bridge the gap between humanity and the other factions. But the lingering suspicion toward humanity remained a hurdle we had yet to overcome. Ambassador Reith, would you like to address the assembly? I asked, gesturing toward him. He nodded and rose, his dignified presence commanding attention. Thank you, Eli, he began, his voice resonating throughout the chamber. The recent conflict has revealed the strengths of our coalition, but it has also lighted the fractures that lie within. Humanity has proven its worth, not just as soldiers, but as diplomats and leaders. It is essential that we recognize this and work together to build a future where all races can coexist peacefully. His words struck a chord, and I could feel the room shift slightly, the tension easing as the assembly began to see the potential for collaboration. Yet, I knew it would take more than words to heal the rifts that had formed over centuries of distrust. We must establish a new framework for cooperation, Reith continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. One that acknowledges the contributions of all members and emphasizes transparency in our dealings. Together, we can forge a path toward peace and security, one where humanity's role is not just as a partner, but as a leader. I felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this was the moment we needed to solidify our place in the Federation. But just as that thought crossed my mind, a commotion erupted from the back of the chamber. A faction leader, his face twisted in anger, rose to his feet. "Enough of this nonsense," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "You would have us bow to the whims of a race that has done nothing but bring chaos. Humanity is a threat, not an ally." The room erupted in chaos, voices clashing as supporters rallied behind him. I felt my heart race, adrenaline flooding my system. This was the moment of reckoning that I had feared. As tensions escalated, I quickly scanned the assembly for allies, but even the pro-human factions seemed hesitant. "Calm down," I shouted, raising my hands in a bid for silence. "Let's not devolve into hostility. We're here to discuss our future, not to resurrect old grievances." But my words fell on deaf ears as the faction leader continued to rally his supporters. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, a reminder of the conflicts that had torn the Federation apart. If we didn't act quickly, we could lose everything we had fought for. Voss shot me a look of concern from the front row, his jaw clenched. "Eli, we need to take control of this situation." I nodded, determination surging through me. We can't let them derail this summit. Let's show them what humanity is capable of. On it, Voss replied, his eyes narrowing with focus. We had fought too hard to let this opportunity slip away. I stepped forward, raising my voice above the din. I will not allow humanity to be cast aside. We are not the enemy here. We have fought alongside you, bled for this alliance. If we cannot find common ground, then we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. The assembly quieted, the anger in the room ebbing as my words resonated with some. I pressed on, driven by the urgency of the moment. This is our chance to build something greater than ourselves. Let's not squander it over petty grievances. We are more than just our histories, we are a coalition united by a shared vision for the future. I could see the dissenting leader wavering, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The assembly was still divided, but I could sense a shift, the possibility of unity sparking like embers. We must take this opportunity to address our fears head-on, I continued, my voice rising in intensity. Let us engage in dialogue rather than threats. Humanity has proven its strength, and it is time for us to work together, not just as allies, but as equals. The leader hesitated, and the room fell into a heavy silence. After a moment, he spoke, his tone more subdued. You speak of unity, yet the scars of the past run deep. How can we trust you? I took a deep breath, recalling the many sacrifices we had made to earn our place here. Trust is not given, it is earned. Let us prove ourselves through our actions moving forward. We must create a new legacy, one where all voices are heard and respected. As the assembly began to murmur again, I saw Vera lean toward Voss, her eyes bright with determination. I could sense her unwavering support, a reminder that we were in this together. We need to do something to illustrate our commitment, Vera whispered, her voice low yet fierce. Maybe a demonstration of our technology, something they can see with their own eyes. I nodded, considering the idea. A demonstration could bridge the gap, showcasing our advancements and proving that humanity was a force for good. Let's organize a demonstration of our technology, I suggested, addressing the assembly once more. Show you what we can bring to the table not just in combat, but in innovation and cooperation. If we are to build trust, we must do so transparently. The assembly began to buzz with conversation, and I could see the possibility of a consensus forming. Yet, even as hope blossomed, I could sense the underlying tension still lingering in the air. Trust would take time, and this was only the beginning. Hours passed as the summit continued, the atmosphere shifting from hostility to cautious collaboration. We discussed trade agreements, technological sharing, and even cultural exchanges, laying the groundwork for a more integrated federation. It was exhilarating yet exhausting, a reminder of the monumental task ahead. Finally, as the day wore on, we concluded the summit with a tentative agreement, a framework for cooperation that acknowledged humanity's contributions while also addressing the concerns of the other factions. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As I stepped down from the podium, the weight on my shoulders began to lift. I had done my part, advocating for humanity's interests while also seeking lasting peace. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. Eli, you did it, Vera said, her voice bright with excitement as she caught up to me. We actually made progress. It was a team effort, I replied, my heart swelling with pride for my friends. We wouldn't be here without each other. Voss clapped a hand on my shoulder, a grin spreading across his face. Let's celebrate this small victory before the next challenge comes our way. As we walked through the bustling halls of the Federation headquarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something extraordinary. Humanity's legacy was just beginning to take shape, and it was a legacy I hoped would endure through the ages. We gathered with our fellow delegates, the atmosphere shifting from tense negotiations to camaraderie. Laughter and chatter filled the room as we toasted to our newfound unity, a tangible manifestation of hope for the future. Yet, amidst the celebration, I felt a flicker of unease. I knew that while we had taken a significant step forward, the galaxy was still rife with uncertainty. There were still factions that would oppose us, still those who viewed humanity as a threat rather than an ally. But for now, as I raised my glass alongside my friends, I allowed myself to relish in the moment. We had achieved something remarkable, and I would fight to protect it. "Here's to our legacy," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. "May it be one of peace, strength, and collaboration." The room erupted in cheers, the sound echoing against the walls of the chamber, a beautiful melody of hope and determination. And as I looked around at my friends, my family, I knew that together we would navigate the trials ahead, shaping a legacy that would endure for generations to come. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but humanity was no longer an afterthought. We were players on this grand stage, ready to take our place among the stars. And as I took a sip of my drink, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. Our legacy had begun, and I was determined to ensure it was one worth fighting for. In the days that followed, we began to implement the agreements forged during the summit. Collaborative projects between our scientists and those of the Federation commenced, and I could see the positive changes unfolding around us. Shared knowledge, technological innovations, and cultural exchanges began to flow between factions, breaking down barriers that had long divided us. Yet, with progress came the inevitable pushback. Not everyone welcomed humanity's rise within the Federation. Whispers of dissent echoed through the corridors, and I received reports of meetings held in secret, discussing ways to undermine our efforts. One evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the latest intelligence reports, a sharp knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Vera, her expression serious. "Eli, we need to talk. It's about the opposition factions," she said, closing the door behind her. "I've received word that they're planning something." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" "There's a faction that's been meeting in secret, discussing ways to sabotage our projects. They see humanity as a threat to their power," she explained, urgency lacing her words. "If we don't act, we risk losing everything we've fought for." My heart sank. I had anticipated resistance, but this was more than just whispers of dissent. It was a coordinated effort to undermine our hard-won progress. "Do we know who's behind it?" I asked, my mind racing. "Yes, it's a coalition of several factions, led by a high-ranking member of the Senate," she replied, her brow furrowed in concern. "If they succeed in their plans, it could set us back years." I took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders once more. "We can't let that happen. We need to confront them head-on, expose their plans before they gain any traction." Vera nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. "I agree. But we need to gather evidence and support from our allies before we make a move. We can't go in unprepared." Together, we began to formulate a plan. We reached out to our trusted allies, gathering intelligence and documenting any activities that could be linked to the opposition factions. It was a risky endeavor, but we knew that time was of the essence. As the days turned into weeks, the tension continued to rise. We operated in the shadows, working to gather support while staying one step ahead of those who would seek to derail our progress. I felt the familiar mix of adrenaline and fear coursing through my veins as we navigated the treacherous landscape of political intrigue. Then, one fateful night, everything came to a head. I received an urgent call from Voss, his voice tense on the other end. "Eli, we've got a lead. We need to meet." I arrived at the designated rendezvous point, a secluded chamber tucked away in the heart of the Federation headquarters. Voss was waiting for me, his expression grave. "They're planning to stage a sabotage during the next public demonstration of our technology," he said, his fists clenched at his sides. "We have to act fast if we want to stop them." I felt my pulse quicken. This was the moment we had been preparing for. "Do we have proof? Can we expose them before it's too late?" Voss nodded, pulling out a data pad. "I intercepted communications that detail their plans. They're going to disrupt the demonstration, creating chaos and turning public opinion against us." My mind raced as I processed the information. We need to gather our allies and prepare a counter-strategy. If we can expose their intentions to the public, we can turn this around. As we strategized, I felt a sense of resolve hardening within me. This was a defining moment for humanity. We would not be pushed back into the shadows. We would fight for our place, for the future we had envisioned. The day of the demonstration arrived, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Representatives from all factions gathered to witness the showcase of humanity's advancements in technology. I stood on the podium, flanked by my team and our allies, ready to present our innovations to the galaxy. As I addressed the crowd, I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Today, we demonstrate not just the power of our technology, but the strength of our alliances. Together, we stand united in the pursuit of progress, ready to shape a future where all races can thrive. Cheers erupted from the crowd, but beneath the surface, I could sense the tension. I scanned the assembly, my heart racing as I awaited any signs of disruption. I was acutely aware that the opposition factions were watching closely, ready to strike. The demonstration began, showcasing our technological advancements, ships, weapons, and communication systems that exemplified humanity's ingenuity. The crowd gasped in awe, and for a moment, I felt the weight of doubt lift from my shoulders. This was our moment to shine. But just as I thought we were gaining ground, chaos erupted. A group of dissenters broke through the security perimeter, brandishing weapons and shouting slogans aimed at undermining our efforts. My heart sank as I realized their plan had come to fruition. "Stay calm," I shouted, trying to regain control of the situation. "This is an opportunity to demonstrate our resolve." The crowd reacted with confusion and fear, but I could see my team moving swiftly, activating our security protocols. Voss and Vera positioned themselves near the dissenters, ready to respond if things escalated further. I stepped forward, raising my voice above the chaos. "This is a peaceful demonstration. We will not be intimidated by those who seek to sow discord." As the dissenters continued their raucous protests, I saw a flicker of doubt among the onlookers. It was time to turn the tide. "Let me show you the truth," I shouted, gesturing toward the nearest demonstration unit. "What you see here is not just technology, it's a testament to our shared vision of the future." With that, I activated the demonstration unit, showcasing our advancements in action. The weapon systems fired harmlessly into the air, light the sky with bursts of color. Gasps of awe echoed from the crowd, and I seized the moment. "Look at what we can achieve when we work together," I called out, my heart racing. "This is not just humanity's legacy, it is a legacy for all of us. We will not allow the actions of a few to overshadow the progress we've made." The dissenters hesitated, confusion spreading among them. The crowd began to cheer, rallying behind the message of unity. I could feel the momentum shifting, and with it came a renewed sense of hope. As the demonstration continued, the dissenters began to retreat, realizing their attempts to disrupt our efforts were failing. My heart swelled with pride as I watched my team rallying the crowd, bringing them together in a show of solidarity. When the chaos finally subsided, the atmosphere in the hall shifted from one of uncertainty to a celebration of our shared achievements. The opposing factions had attempted to fracture our progress, but instead, they had united us in our resolve. In the days that followed, we gathered the evidence of the sabotage attempts, exposing the dissenters' intentions to the public. The backlash was swift, and the support for our coalition grew stronger as we stood together against those who sought to undermine our legacy. As I reflected on the events that had transpired, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but humanity had proven that we were not just survivors, we were pioneers. Together, we had shaped our legacy, and as I looked around at my team, I knew we were just getting started. There was much work to be done, and the road ahead would not be easy. But united in purpose, we would continue to advocate for a future where humanity's place within the Federation was not just acknowledged but celebrated. We had become key figures in this new era, leaving a legacy that would endure long after we were gone. And as we prepared for the next chapter in our journey, I felt a sense of pride wash over me. We were humanity, and our story was far from over. with the sun setting beyond the horizon, casting a warm glow over the gathering of our allies. I raised my glass once more, a smile breaking across my face. To our legacy and to the future we will build together. Cheers erupted around me, a chorus of voices echoing through the halls of the Federation headquarters. The legacy of humanity was alive and thriving, and I was determined to ensure it would shine brightly for generations to come.